So I'd like to call the Capital Improvement and City Development Committee out of recess at 6:30. Sitting with me again is Vice Chair Waterman, Councilor Waterman, and Member Councilor Dolan, and thank you, Councilor Blair and Councilor Jackson, for attending. Tonight we'll be talking to the police at 6:30, fire at 7 o'clock, recreation at 7:30, school at 8 o'clock, and wastewater at 8:30. Starting tonight with the police department, they're on page 71 of the capital improvement plan. And welcome, Chief.
Thank you, sir.
And welcome, Deb Gould. Thank you for attending our meeting tonight. I'm marking you as a guest of the committee. Chief, to bring you up to speed, the Capital Improvement and City Development Committee is meeting with department heads to review their only urgent projects because of the limited funding that's available in the next fiscal year. The mayor met with us earlier in this meeting and told us that due to the requests from the department heads, that he had to cut the $500,000 capital improvement budget, and that we essentially have zero, but that he would be willing to fund projects after the cash is certified, free cash is certified in October. To which I responded that we approve the budget, and so we have the opportunity to make cuts in the budget, and my committee members and councils will be talking about that in the future. So in your section of the capital improvement plan, we are not going to discuss the joint public safety complex because that's a large project that's going to require bonding, and I think that subject is such a large subject that it should be handled in a separate section of conversation. So both in fire and police, I'm going to ask that even though it's in the capital improvement plan marked urgent, that we take it off the table for this committee meeting, because I think that that's a discussion that should happen in full council. And so that brings us to the other things that you have scheduled for urgent. But before we get into those particular things, Chief, last year the automated fingerprint system was urgent, and my committee had discussed that fingerprinting system extensively during our meetings, and we thought that you had a dire and urgent need to replace that due to the contract with the state and the age of that fingerprint system. And then this year the book comes out and we see it slipped from urgent down to priority one. What's going on?
That AFIS system is above and beyond the current fingerprint system that we use throughout the state. That system is a system that directly will, instead of going through the instead of going up to the state police and getting our fingerprints through the state police, that system would allow us to access multiple databases nationwide. So it's an enhanced system. The system's adequate for what we do with routine arrests. This is an enhanced investigatory system, so I believe only a handful of departments across the Commonwealth have it.
Okay, so let's back up and talk about the system that you have that's on a lease from the state. That system is still functioning, it's working.
Right, what happened was
they discontinued the maintenance program on it and told you that you had to pick it up.
Right, we picked it up. So the state used to supplement the program by giving the cities and towns the fingerprint system. They no longer do that anymore, so you have to purchase your own system, which the city did. Along with that, they dropped the maintenance tech support, almost like an unfunded mandate. So they said, oh yeah, you need tech support, but we're not going to give it to you anymore. We're not going to cover it. So they pushed it off to the cities and towns. So that's something now that's in my operating budget for tech support.
Excellent. So have you had problems with that system this year?
Not since we've gone to the new system. There were some bugs when you roll it out, but we ironed them out, and it's running smooth. I mean, with any type of computer software, you always get glitches, and there's always some coding behind the scene, and some tables don't add up and align. So, but it's usually trace back to some human error along the way, so garbage in is garbage out. So it's working.
That's all doing.
Is that tech support, is that like a yearly fee?
Mm-hmm.
So if you call them every single day for the year, it's still the same price?
Yeah, it depends, year to year, it might go up. We try to do 3-year contracts, so we lock in our price. And most companies now, because we're a capitalistic society, usually go up 3 to 5% per year. We're experiencing with other computer software systems. Technology is great, but it comes at a cost. So when you buy a software system, the first thing I ask is obviously how much, and then how much is the tech support, the maintenance fee, everything that comes along with it. And then it's proprietary, so you can't use it with other software systems. And then the lifespans of perhaps even 3 years. So you could, even your home computers, after 3 years, they're done. That's why most corporations now are leasing computers for 3 years at a time. So after 3 years, when they roll out a new service pack with it, it's not like they have piles and piles of useless computers. After 3 years, I mean, I think that's what the goal of the city would be in the long term. What I believe what Bill Lennox eventually wants to do with the computer citywide, because after 3 years, like they just did with the Microsoft Office.
So discontinued Windows 7.
Windows 7 is no
January
longer
1st.
serviceable. So you go to the help button, it says, oh yeah, you gotta upgrade. You gotta buy the new system. Was it 10 now, I believe?
Yes, 10.
So to make a long answer even longer, that's that's the reason behind the.
But to summarize your answer is that you've now put something in your capital budget to maintain that for
Yes.
years out.
Yes.
If it crashes, we're going to have an emergency funding request.
Appropriation, yes.
Right.
So this is an enhanced system for basically the detectives
Yep.
to conduct enhanced fingerprint investigations. So
Right, and for this, I'm very supportive, but it's a priority one. It's not an urgent priority.
right, when I reviewed the memo for the urgent and priority, I realigned it because it's important, but we can get by it if it's this honorable body doesn't fund it. So that's why I readjusted it.
Right. We'd all like to see you have it, because we'd all like to see you have maximum tools you can to fight what it is you're fighting every day, but there's only so much money in the tree.
Right.
Right. Does anyone have other questions about the fingerprinting? Then I'd like to move on to a different topic that I highlighted in my book on page 75. You had an item, Citizen Police Report Online Filing System, that I had a question on. Is that an annual subscription? And a comment, in my opinion, that's too low a priority. Can we talk about that police report online filing system and what that?
So that would be a system where the citizens could document minor incident reports, say as a lost cell phone, stolen cell phone, an item which would be a routine report for a police officer. So we don't have to take a police officer off the street, take the report, go to the report room, and document the incident.
So would that include accident reports?
No, accident reports are separate. That's under a state law that's done separately. They're doing their accident reports. A part of the CAD and RMS system has a accident diagram system, which is actually exporting all the information taken in from the dispatcher and pushing it over to the accident reporting system. So that's kind of semi-automated, and the citizens have to do their reports according to state law. They have so many business days to get the accident report in after they document it. So
Can you give me an idea of where the threshold is on what the citizens would be able to report online and what they couldn't?
let's say you go to the YMCA and you're working out, and after you get out, you're looking for your cell phone, and you can't find your cell phone. You're not sure if you dropped it in the parking lot or out of the convenience store when you stopped to get milk on the way home, sort of that. Most insurance companies need a report. They won't engage or talk to you unless you have a police report on file. So what usually happens now is you come down to the police station, we take a car off a police officer off the street, comes called back into the station, takes the report, documents it, and unfortunately the hope of finding that or investigating that is very low because we have other priorities that need more time in investigatory leads, if you will.
So over the course of a year, how much time do you think your force expends on this type of report?
A lot. A lot.
And that is 100 hours, 1,000 hours, 10,000 hours?
I could get back to you. To quantify it, it is a lot. If you listen to a scanner and you hear 10-3 the lobby, that's usually one of those reports. So it happens quite frequently.
Every day?
Oh yeah, every day. Oh yes.
Several times a day?
Usually the day shift and the 4 to 12 shift have those type of reports. It's a common occurrence.
So you've just added fodder to my desire to think that this should be a higher priority, because when you're in a situation time-wise, what is your overtime expenditure? It's over 200,000, over 250,000? And it's because we're spending time doing things that citizens could do themselves online.
It comes with a cost, but I think we have higher priorities than this.
The cost is only 31,500.
But there's an annual fee on top of that with the tech support, the maintenance, the upgrades. It's
I see.
technology, so this isn't the bottom line price. There's a
Okay.
reoccurring cost that would add to the budget itself under either contractual services or maintenance of software or maintenance of contracts. That it all depends on where it's going to fall.
There is an increasing desire of people to be able to file on their smartphones their interactions with both the building department and the assessor and the police chief.
Like, I agree it's important, however, the mere fact that this station has no space needs, we're bulging. There's other capital improvement projects that can create space in that facility until we get a new facility. That's why I say we have other priorities. We just, that building's, we're pouring, good money after bad for that building. Like, I just got a bill today for $15,000 to clean out the pipes because the ladies' room system, cast iron pipe is all corroded, backed up, and it's causing floods, like similar to the one on the second floor that happened. So we got a quote for a company to come in to clean that cast iron pipe out, so it doesn't, so it flows smoothly out to the drain.
But in your budget, you do have a line item to be able to take care of maintenance of the facility.
It's ironic, that's $10,000, and it hasn't grown in 22 years.
Yeah, well, you can't roll it over from year to year.
That's why if you look at a lot of my funding requests that comes over, it's out of that account or similar projects for building maintenance. $10,000 is not enough.
No,
$10,000 today versus $10,000 10 years ago is not the same $10,000.
you're absolutely correct.
But it's amazing what we do and get by with the support of this council on the funding that we do for that building. Because $10,000 can't keep going with that building.
I think we recognize that. The Capital Improvements Committee has a special sensitivity towards that. The rest of the council I can't speak for, and the rest of the administration I cannot speak for. But when we sit down and we have our conversations, we feel just like you do, that we're trying to drain a swamp being bit by alligators. And the challenge is very large. Can we move on to vehicles, because we only got like 15 minutes left, and then we gotta get to the fire department. On vehicles, you have a nice plan where you're trying to replace 7 interceptors a year over the next 5 years at a cost of about $1.7 million. And my question is, does it need to be 7? Could it be 6? Could it be 5?
Beggars can't be choosers. 7 is optimal. That's the optimal number to replace each year. We're currently not doing that. We're doing basically 7 with 1 sprinkled in here and there, depending on the revolving fund and how much money the revolving fund is generating. We're doing 7 every 3 years right now.
I'm sorry, you're doing?
7 every 3 years. We're doing short-term borrowing. So that tow contract that we have is generating $156,000, I believe, and that is my understanding with the short-term borrowing is that is being used to pay down that note. However, I have other ideas, and speaking with the mayor, we're trying to brainstorm and think outside the box, and it appears he's supportive of some other ideas to utilize that tow contract funding So I actually requested a meeting with the mayor, myself, the city auditor, and the city treasurer to discuss that idea, and he's receptive to it. So hopefully we can have a plan moving into the next fiscal year on what to do with that tow contract. Would be more beneficial to supply the police department with cruisers, because we are generating our own funding, if you will, to support the purchase of the cruisers. I don't have a line item in my budget to purchase police cars.
Isn't the revolving account for that?
Revolving fund historically purchased the cruisers. However, approximately 10 years ago, I believe, the state did an audit at the local courthouse, and they determined that the 4 departments out of that courthouse were receiving a court cost assessment by the judge that went to each department, and that was derivative from the stopping the cars, the OUIs, the routine court costs that came with prosecuting those cases from the police department, and what that was put into this 2601 account. They said that that should be sent to the state general fund.
50% of it.
All the court costs, 100% of the court costs, we lost. So now, the only thing generating from that, generating into that account is the speeding tickets, or the traffic fines. The traffic fines, the number of traffic fines written are down. So that cruiser fund basically is generating enough money to maintain the fleet. My worry is that if we're going to be going to green vehicles, my understanding is that there's an exception. There is no exception?
You're the exception.
There is an exception.
You are an exception.
All right, good. Having, general discussion with the mayor, I put him on notice of it. My fear is that if we do go with green cruises, which I'm not opposed to, that there's a side cost to it, or an ancillary cost, that maybe our in-house mechanic can't do as many repairs that we used to enjoy with the current cruises versus the green cruises, because their battery, the different engines and what have you. So that 2601 revolving fund can't support additional costs being drained out of it. And we just had in December, we just had 11 cruises come off warranty. So when cruises come off warranty, we spend a lot more money on the alternators, the rear ends. I'm not a mechanic. I just see the money being drained out.
Currently, you're getting 7 every 3 years. Where are you in that cycle right now?
May 22nd, I believe, is the end of the third year on the short-term borrowing. I believe that comes off the debt. So we're due to purchase 7 more, or Plan B is to readjust the funding from that tow contract to put it in the line item, which is the conversation to have with the mayor. So we would buy 3 per year and not 7 at one big, and wouldn't be a burden because we're generating that money from the tow contract. So it's not like you're appropriating additional monies to the police budget, that those monies would just be on paper reallocated, because we're using that tow contract to pay the note anyway.
Got it. Question? Go ahead.
Just to clarify a couple of things. The tow contract is a general fund local receipt. It is used to support the overall budget and operation of the city of Attleboro. Right now,
So it's getting diverted currently?
No, the tow contract revenue is a general fund local receipt.
That's what that memo said.
All general fund local receipts support the entire budget of the city of Attleboro. Within the budget, presently, there is debt associated with the pay down of acquisitions of previously received cruisers.
So that 156K has been obligated out of the general fund, aligned to the
no.
towing contract?
No.
No?
Nope.
Okay. I
No,
still don't
it's
understand
just-
it.
So local receipts is a bucket of money so your 3 major revenue sources are the levy, local receipts, and state aid. Within the local receipts is the tow contract. The chief's position is, if I could figure out a way to segregate the local receipt, that piece out, instead of it supporting the entire budget, of which a piece of that is the debt associated with the acquisition of my vehicles. If I could figure a way to segregate that 150 out, and every year I know I'll have access to that 150 for 3 vehicles, then I wouldn't be seeking an authorization to borrow on a rotating basis of getting 7 vehicles every 3 years. That's not to say it's gonna happen, but it is something that's being reviewed to see, is that a more practical way to go about it, instead of paying principal and interest for 3 years to acquire 7 vehicles in 1 year. Part of the other difficulty relative to the whole process that the chief explained in the preliminary discussion with me the other day was the ability to actually acquire the vehicles. You know, from the time you order a vehicle to the time you receive a vehicle, there's all sorts of considerations. So I don't know what the final potential plan from the administration will be, but it is something that is, the mayor has agreed to sit down and like we can kind of hash out what the potential would be. But you would be essentially diverting revenue from the general fund, which means you have a funding gap now, right? Mm-hmm. But in theory, you divert the same thing. You divert future borrowings would not need to be supported by something within the general fund. If the tow contract went away, you wouldn't have any money to support the program.
Right, so it'd be 100% general fund. And there's arguments for and against trying to set up the police department as an enterprise account or something like an enterprise account, because that has constitutional issues.
Yeah, I don't think,
But that's never gonna happen, yeah. Councilor Dolan.
What's the issue with the getting of the vehicle? I understand there's always like a time, like when it comes to the money, what's the difference when the vehicle actually arrives, like in between ordering it and receiving it?
So, I'm not sure I understand your question, but
Well,
let me
you had
answer it
said-
this way.
I can answer that.
So when you do an authorization to borrow, so if an authorization to borrow came before the municipal council tomorrow, and then you do the public hearing, and then at some point you do, that the chief has to order the vehicle, okay? So if the chief is gonna order the vehicle, for simplicity's sake, let's say he ordered it on May 15th. In order to put a purchase order in the computer system on May 15th, he has to have the authorization to borrow. And 30 days would have had to lapse between the day of your vote and May 15th. So today, in fiscal 2020, that's not an issue. He now has permission to go buy it. When he acquires that vehicle, you actually have had, Laura Gignac would have to go to market. So if he ordered it on May 15th, then he's saying the lead time is actually substantial today to purchase that, 12 to 15 months right now, lead time, because of a changeover in the manufacturing process with the vehicles that are presently approved on the list. So he'd be looking at actual possession of the vehicle in May of calendar year, a year out, so that's fiscal year
21.
May of 21, which depending on, by June of 21, you'd have to go to market, because if we actually incur that expense, you would have to go temporary borrowing with the bond market in order to be covered so you wouldn't get hit on your free cash.
But does that only apply if we do temporary borrowing? If we, hypothetically, let's say you all have your meeting, we're like, yeah, that's great, we'll use the tow contract, we'll set it aside in a little kitty and do what the chief would like to do. Let's just say that happens. Does all that apply?
The difference, as I see it, say that would come
Like if
in
you're not
your
borrowing.
budget.
Right.
It would be an FY21 budget item, right? Let's say it was funded that way, however the mechanism happened. If it was in the budget for the chief to purchase the vehicle, theoretically the chief could order the vehicle on July 1st, because that's when the budget stops. He'd have to sign the purchase order and all that good stuff on July 1st. It could conceivably still take 12 to 15 months to get the vehicle, because of it. That's the manufacturing process, that's not going to change. So we'd be looking at fiscal 22 for him to acquire. So I think in the discussion of the plan, potential plan of what to do, you're gonna have a gap year, and this is likely to be it, which may not actually be a bad thing, because according to my notes, the final pay down for the police vehicles is actually in fiscal 21.
Okay.
So if the ordering process, whether it's through the borrowing process,
It would be almost timed perfectly.
yeah, it's almost, you know, looking at just the dates and stuff, it's really a good opportunity to have a thoughtful discussion to see what is the more realistic option. But when I was talking to the chief, I looked at the CIP and I said, but chief, you say you're getting 7, but when you really thoughtfully discuss it further, he's, like you said, he's not getting 7 a year. He's getting 7 throughout the opportunity for a short-term borrowing, and our pay down cycle on that seemed to be within a 3-year cycle. So he's like, you know, I'm really not getting that. So if we went to something that was a smaller annual give of 150, then that you'd be fixed at that. And there's other things, you're not gonna pay interest on it, right? If it's the set aside of something. But it's all, it's truly an administrative decision to kind of lay it all out and look at what is the most financially feasible.
And if you weren't doing that, if you're not paying the interest on it, then you have more room, like it would be off the books for borrowing, right? So you'd have more leeway if we did need to
Capacity.
borrow for something else.
Right, but you don't have the funding source either. He's taking the revenue stream and moving it someplace to dedicate it, which means that 150
But
right
that
now-
funding source doesn't necessarily go to him.
Right, but
So you're removing that revenue stream that's not necessarily his per se, but you're still leaving room for other borrowing if we did have to borrow it, but we wouldn't be paying interest on his.
but you've taken the
vehicles.
150 revenue source out.
Right.
So if I could,
Sorry.
I'd like this conversation to continue during our budget administration and capital improvement joint meetings.
Which
Because
revenue should
I just got one question left for the chiefs, and then you all get an opportunity to ask a question. Get right to you, Councilor Jackson. Chief, regarding the vehicles, because that's your only urgent project, what would you like the committee to recommend to the mayor?
I'd like to see the funding from the tow contract be put into the line item in the budget of the operating budget of the police department.
And when you say you want to move that line item into your operating budget, you're talking about the 350,000.
No, yes, the 356, yes. I currently do have a line item in the police department budget, but it hasn't been funded, I think, in 30,
It's
35
nowhere
years.
near adequate. Councilor Jackson?
Thank you very much, Council Conti. So, hi, Chief.
Hi, how are you?
So I'm gonna bring up a question that, when Superintendent Mike Tyler was here the other evening, and he talked about how much money he saves because he has really good mechanics. Do you spend a lot on your vehicles to send them out? I mean, just off the top of your head?
I have one of the best mechanics in any municipality. He is fabulous, fantastic, and unfortunately nearing retirement. He takes pride in saving money and doing an amazing job. I absolutely have a man crush on him. He's awesome. He is fabulous. Like, he'll call me and just be so elated on how much money he's tried to save us, or talk to Ford Motor Company, or extend a warranty and everything. He's an amazing person, and he's a fabulous, fabulous mechanic.
So Chief, could you, excuse me, Councilor Jackson, could you, for Councilor Jackson and for our benefit, between now and the budget hearings that Councilor Delicio will be having, could you summarize what's going on in that maintenance department on a finance basis for the amount being expended on the repair of the vehicles, so that we can take a look at that as a separate line item in the budget? Would that help you?
I think that's a great idea, thank you.
Okay,
Can I
good.
do a follow-up question?
Yes.
And I know you didn't want to talk about it, but I just want to ask you a question. So, public safety building that everybody's wishing for, do you have any idea where you think it might go? Have you looked at anywhere, like,
I thought about this long and hard. There's several areas. Ideally, I'd like to be centrally located. The land where the hockey rink is right now
Yeah.
would be a fantastic location for us for response time and citizens getting to the police department. Another great location is with
Can we get to the timing?
Ciabras right now.
Yeah.
If we took that parcel of land, knocked the buildings down, put a station there. The TI facility has a lot of land.
What timing? What about the timing?
and not too many other locations, because if we're gonna do it right, we're gonna build it from the ground up, police combined facility with a regional jail lockup, a communication center, and a community room for the community. We have no community room right now for citizens.
So we're gonna terminate the conversation there, because we're not really gonna discuss this during these meetings. It's gonna be a separate meeting in front of the full council. Is anyone else?
just have a
Yes,
quick
go
one.
ahead.
What would you say, just give me a rough guess on how far you were able to safely push the vehicles? Years, mileage? Describe it any way you want.
Usually, the life of the vehicle is approximately 3 years.
3 years.
We purposely do not allow the vehicle to be driven 24 hours a day. If it was driven 24 hours a day, it'd be 1 year. We try to down the vehicle at least 8 hours a day. If we can stretch it to 16 because of days off and changing of the shifts on the day off rotation on the 4 and 2, but 100,000 miles is about the border top of where you want to go. Usually by 100,000 miles, it's unsafe.
And it's not like the 100,000 on my car.
No, it's hard driven miles. Sometimes we might get 60, sometimes we get 80, sometimes we get 90, but we will not put an officer in an unsafe cruiser. We just won't do it.
Thank you.
All set?
Yeah.
Thank you, chief.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your
Thank you.
time.
Appreciate it.
Next up is fire department, and the fire department is located on page 29.
Hey, Chief, how you doing? Good to see you. Yeah.
You can have that, I'll say it. Thanks.
Welcome, chief.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, good evening.
Chief, just to recap, the capital improvement and city development committee has been informed that the capital improvement line item in the budget is going to be reduced to zero for fiscal year '21 because the mayor has over $2.5 million in requests from department heads to figure out how to budget the city for the next year. And he's said that if we're going to fund capital improvements, it'll have to be after October based on the certification of free cash. So that puts the committee in a difficult situation where we've been lobbying to get the capital improvement plan done in time with the charter so that we can make a budget request to the mayor only to hear that we don't have any money. So you're caught up. The second thing is that we're not going to talk about the capital improvement urgent project on the joint public safety complex because that's such a large subject and one which involves two departments that I'd like the full council to be in those hearings. And I think that that's a much longer conversation than really what we want to hit. What we're interested in talking about tonight is just the urgent projects only. And I had a few questions when I was reading through your chapter in the book. The first one being the positive pressure ventilating fans and smoke ejectors is something that I recall that we funded. Is that true?
No, that was not funded.
So your item is there and it's urgent and it's $30,000.
Yep. Just in the spirit of, transparency, I've had lots of conversations with the mayor, some of them by email, some of them in person. So the problem, as I see it now with the CIP, this is my 11th year doing it, so now I have a lot of history in it. A lot of departments puts everything as urgent, and it doesn't get funded. So, whether it's urgent or not, that doesn't really mean all that much if it's not being funded. The last round of conversations I've had with the mayor were basically, if there's 5 things that we can do, what are the 5 things you want to do? So what that means is you kind of look at what you're dealing with, and it doesn't mean that something's not urgent, it just means you're asking for funding for something else. So I haven't specifically asked him for funding specifically just for the positive pressure fans this fiscal year. He got an email request for a lot of things, and many of them are in the works, so to speak, or at least under consideration. But that's why that's still in the plan, because I don't really believe that that'll happen this fiscal year. So I want to make sure that it's still a talking point, so that everybody realizes there's a need for it.
And you can replace the fans as they fail.
Yeah, they're pushing 25 years old, so the problem with, fire equipment is that once they start to fail, especially now, something that's changed is that we're mandated, we're OSHA required, OSHA now, and because of that, we have to have certain things tested, and when they fail, they have to meet an OSHA standard, so we can't keep them in service. We just actually did a bunch of testing on our Scott air packs, and lots of them are failing, so we have to replace parts of them. Doesn't mean that there's anything inherently necessarily wrong with them, but once they go through the process and they identify things, we have to start to change it. So the problem with the fans is they're so old that when they do break, you can't get them fixed, there's not parts for them, and then if you replace them piecemeal, 1 or 2 at a time, the problem that you run into is that all the trucks have different types of equipment on it, and the guys using this equipment in the dark, in the rain, in the snow, with heavy gloves on, the last thing you want is, the controls on one to be over here and the other one to be over here. So you really want certain pieces of equipment to be as close to identical as you can, which is why the recommendation is always to replace them all at once instead of 1 or 2 a year.
Got it. Moving on, is replacing the roof of Briggs Corner Fire Station in your top 5?
Yes,
And that roof is currently leaking?
it's been leaking for 10 years. It was actually, the roof was replaced probably 10 years ago. It was a little bitter on the replacement. It's been leaking since it was replaced. It's actually worse, so it still leaks like crazy. We had a company out there to look at it, and the material underneath the rubber roof is spongy, so it indicates that there's actually water under the rubber membrane. So the concerns with that is every year that we don't fix it, I have no idea what that roof deck is like. It's waterlogged and probably moldy.
Is that a flat roof?
Yes.
Yeah. Flat roofs in New England don't mix.
So that actually, I did send a request for funding to the mayor. It hasn't come here yet because it's because of the scope of the project. We're in the process of actually getting bids. I'm working with Gale, the capital improvements upstairs, capital items to actual definitive for that.
So that means if the Briggs roof at Briggs Corner Station is in your top 5 list, that means all the rest of the items are vehicles.
Nope, I also have the roof at headquarters.
Just before it, yes.
Yep.
Yep, that's in the top 5 as well. Okay. So that means the rest of the 3 are all vehicles. Correct?
Urgent, yes.
Which takes us to, I'm trying to find it. A big section, Chief. Page 42. I'd like to commend you on page 42, Chief. I think you've done close to the best job in preparing the council on where you stand in a vehicle portrait. And I've asked the Department of Public Works to use you as a model for their department. So that's the ultimate compliment, to ask people to copy you and work that way. So give us the lowdown on vehicles.
Historically, many years ago, what we used to do, which most of the departments are doing, is when staff cars, and when I say staff car, what I mean for the fire department, it's somebody who isn't primarily going on calls or isn't likely to go on calls, but it doesn't mean that they're not going to. So my fire inspector is, that used to be a staff car. We used to get all of those vehicles from the police departments as hand-me-downs. The problem was that I would get the car for free, and then I'd spend $5,000 on repairs, and I still had an unreliable vehicle. And we've done that forever, and they looked like junk. They were a different color than the fleet. I mean, it was like, it really didn't represent the city or the department well. What I was able to start to do with the mayor was I looked at a plan. I started this with Mayor Dumas, was trying to forecast the life expectancy of the vehicles and what we can do to extend it. And one of the things I came up with was, if we can commit to buying one vehicle, I'm not talking fire engines or ambulances, just a vehicle, one a year, when we're caught up, which we're this close to being caught up now, what we can do with them is, for myself, the assistant fire chief, and the battalion chief, the deputies that run the shift, those 3 vehicles, every time we buy one, I would take one, the next year the deputy would take one, the next year the assistant chief would take one. Ours get handed down to my fire inspector, fire alarm superintendent, fire EMS director. Then their cars get handed down to the outlying stations for a staff car, so that if the guys have to go do something. By doing that, I can keep the vehicle for 10 years. We couldn't keep a 12-year-old hand-me-down for 10 years, but we're at the point now that the only one that really needs to be replaced is the one that the battalion chief uses, the headquarters deputy, because that's the one that's a 2013. That was in the CIP last year. It's in it this year. I had sent a funding request for that to make it a hybrid vehicle, increase the price about 10 grand.
So that's the battalion 1.
Yep.
Now, when you reorganized, I think it was 10 years ago, but it seems less than that.
It was 2012.
Yeah. The rationale for the reorganization of expanding your staff and thus expanding your need for cars was that the revolving account on the ambulance with its new fee structure was going to contribute to your budget. Has that worked out?
No.
No.
I mean, the reality of it is we generate since then, the revolving account the EMS used to generate about $1.2 million back then. It generates about $3.2 million now. The cost for the reorg weren't the $2 million. It goes to the general fund. So some of it does come back to us in our regular budget, but it's not earmarked for, for EMS. So the problem that we're running into with that now is just the cost in the revolving account are exceeding what I take in on the fire department side. It's not really sustainable. So we used to buy ambulances from that account. We don't anymore.
Questions for Chief? Councilor Jackson.
Thank you very much. So, hi, Chief.
Right.
You got a lot of cars. You got a lot, so that's a lot of day staff.
Mm-hmm.
Those are, okay. How many get to take their cars home?
I do, the assistant chief does.
Deputies don't?
Nope, deputies don't, no.
So-
The EMS director does. He's also the lead on the fire investigation team. So he takes it home, but it doesn't really get a lot of miles on it. It's,
Now, because I passed one of your cars today, it didn't have any lettering on it, and by city ordinance, we're supposed to have lettering on all the cars, right? Is it a new one?
yeah,
Okay,
yeah, there's a couple that don't. I don't have any lettering on mine.
no. Okay. And I'm gonna ask you the same question I asked Chief Hegney. As far as maintenance of vehicles, if you could do the same that Councilor Conti had asked for, because we're hearing that some.
You should explain what that is,
like
because he
send it
might
all
not have
out.
been here.
Yeah,
Chief,
too much is
if you
going on.
could, between now and the time we sit down on the budget hearings with Councilor Delicio's committee, prepare a spreadsheet of what your maintenance costs are in the department through your maintenance department, so we can get a feeling for the dollar volume, and some sense on the peaks and valleys of that expenditure.
And how much is going out to, it's that your maintenance person isn't been able to do,
Okay.
okay?
Yeah,
Thank you.
I mean, ballpark, it's about 100 grand a year. Total cost of vehicle maintenance between our maintenance accounts and our supplies accounts and the
Goes
revolving
out
account side of it.
outside your staff?
Yeah, that's outside overtime. I use overtime to pay that.
And in your analysis also include the cars that you send out someplace else to have repaired because you can't do it inside the
Yep,
house.
I can get you all of that.
Yep, thank you. Jackson, you all set?
I'm all set, thank you.
Councilor Dolan, and then Deb.
So the fire department doesn't have a mechanic, right? You guys don't have an actual mechanic?
No, I have a officer who does some work on overtime, but I don't have a mechanic. We used to have two.
Used to have two?
Yeah, two
What, how come we don't have any?
Good question. I don't know. I mean, one was laid off, the other one, retired, and they've just never been replaced.
So has anybody ever, like, figured out done the math on a mechanic versus paying overtime for a lieutenant to do the work?
It's a little hard to make that analysis because some of the repairs, no matter what, have to go out unless, we don't have a facility to do the work in either. That's the other part of the problem for us. We don't have a lift. So even if I had a mechanic at the fire station, some of the things that can't do anymore that we used to do, we used to park the vehicles up on ramps. You can't really do that. So we would need a better facility to actually do the work. I'm a proponent of a city garage. I think it's something that the city should do and should have been done a long time ago. I think that we should have certified mechanics that are certified to work on emergency vehicles, and then we just drop the vehicle off and be done with it.
And can I ask Deb a question?
Certainly.
Just like with the police department, what funds do they generate that goes to the?
So I was going to wait and tell you, you can't dedicate the tow to a line in the budget. So that needs to be clear. It's not allowable. There might be other opportunities
It's gotta go into
to
the general
segregate.
fund first.
Yeah, but what Chief Hagney was discussing potentially might be something that we could look at for special purpose type things. But you can't dedicate the revenue that, the tow contract or the ambulance revenue and say, the chief brings in X number of dollars in ambulance revenue for the general, the revolving, local receipts, and we're gonna dedicate this to the piece of the budget. Just doesn't work that way. They bring a lot of revenue in relative to fees, not just the ambulance revolving. We can get that information for you. Their ambulance revolving fund, to date, this I printed on the 29th, so their total expenses in the fire ambulance revolving fund was $689,000. Their revenue posted to date was only $653,000. So they've spent more money out of the revolving fund this year than they've taken in.
And what types of things do you buy out of the revolving fund?
I pay mostly personnel items. I pay the paramedic stipends. The biggest expense now that's become a major problem is that I have to pay paramedic tuition for a lot of new hires since we've been unsuccessful getting paramedics. So I sent seven firefighters to paramedic school. It's about 15 grand for the tuition, and then when they're in school, I have to cover their overtime. When they're away from work, I have to cover their shifts with overtime. We pay that out of the revolving account too. And on top of that, when they finish paramedic school, they get another $5,000 contractual payment. So each firefighter that we hire that I have to send to the fire academy, I'm probably spending $55,000 to $60,000 to get them certified as a paramedic.
And I think we discussed that during the budget, and that money that you're using to spend people to become paramedics is realistically money that you could use
Yes.
towards capital acquisitions, but it's costing us money. We're paying, and then the biggest concern that came out in the budget, I think last year, is after they do all this training, there's nothing that guarantees they'll stay here.
Right, yeah.
They could go elsewhere where the salary for that position potentially is higher, and you're gonna be, you're the training ground. And it adversely impacts the capital acquisition stream too. So,
I mean, call me naive or I'm not in your line but it's just odd that, like, if you send these men or women to go for their paramedic school, so like, why wouldn't they just be kind of like taken out of the rotation instead of paying a whole new crew overtime?
They are taken out of rotation. The problem is that we're staffed at the minimum we need to keep the stations open. So when you look in the budget book, they count as firefighters. In order for me to keep all the stations open, they're one of the firefighters we count. When they're away, we're faced with two options. We either have to take a truck out of service because I don't have enough personnel, or we backfill it with overtime. That's what we're doing. When I got hired, 20 years ago, we had 18 firefighters per shift. That's not counting officers, 18 firefighters. We typically operate with 15. That's the bare bones minimum to keep everything open. So we don't have a little bit of a buffer like we used to have a long, long time ago. And that creates a whole bunch of problems. Like if I had that many firefighters, when I have to send them to paramedic school, we have a buffer. You don't necessarily have to hire all the time. We don't have that. And actually, hiring now, we solve one problem, we create another problem. I'm short now. I'm short several firefighters. I've had a couple of retirements. We'll be hiring again in July, which is good, but it creates another problem because I'm positive that we won't be able to get paramedics. So we'll hire EMTs again. So I have 7 that are in paramedic school now. When they're done, I have to send them to the fire academy, so I can't really use them as firefighters. I can't use them as paramedics. That's 7 employees. We're gonna probably hire 5 more in the summer. So I'm gonna have 12. That's 3 every day that the ships have to figure out, where do we put these people? I can't have them on a fire engine if they haven't been trained to go into fires. Can't really have them on an ambulance unless I have an experienced paramedic with them, so it creates a lot of challenges.
Councilor Jackson.
Thank you very much. Chief, I mean, I've been sitting on this council off and on for a long time, and I can remember we used to just hire firefighters if they didn't have to be a paramedic, and then you went through all that rigmarole where, oh yeah, you had to have paramedics, so they already had to be a paramedic. Now you've gone to hiring firefighters, and we pay for that. Oh no, and then you went through the stage where, correct me if I'm wrong, where it was a job stipulation, like you could hire them as firefighters, but they had to go and get
That's
the
what we still
paramedic,
do
and
now.
they were,
It is a job stipulation.
but we're paying for it, not them.
Right.
So is that contractual?
No, because it's civil service, when we hire, when we pull a civil service list, we ask for firefighters with a special certification as paramedics. If there's none on that list, or not enough on that list, or not enough signs saying they'll take a position with Attleboro, now we say to civil service, we want firefighters who are certified as EMTs. Okay, so now this is because we're regulated by civil service. So they're hired as firefighters who are certified as EMTs. Anything we put on them, we have the right to do it, but it's on us. So we can't say to those people we hire as EMTs, like, you can have this job as a firefighter EMT, but you have to become a paramedic, unless we send them and we pay for it. So we have that, we take that expense on when we put that burden on them.
Who says that we have to pay for it? Civil service does?
We can't require them to become it if we don't pay them to do it.
That doesn't make any sense.
They'll be like hiring a teacher saying that you have to go get a master's degree when you only need you need a PhD when you only need a master's degree to be a teacher. You can't put a stipulation that's above the job requirement. And the civil service job requirement, or the civil service qualifications, because we're asking for an EMT list, is EMT.
It's like an unfunded mandate.
Yeah, we gotta fix that.
All set?
Yes, thank you.
I would like to have a conversation with you about
Yeah,
this
that's
after
a
the
lot of
meeting.
money.
Counselor,
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Swold.
So my basic question then, do you need paramedics?
Yeah.
Like, so if you can hire them as an EMT, everybody in your department has to be a paramedic?
No, but the problem is that I have about 50 paramedics. We have 3 ambulances in service at all times. So the bare bones minimum just to operate that's 24. That's not counting vacations, that's not counting to have an extra paramedic here and there. So the bare bones minimum is really 24. And then what you have to be careful of is just being certified as a paramedic isn't, not all paramedics are the same. So when they get hired, you have experienced paramedics, you have some people that are stronger and weaker. So you also have to have a way to kind of mentor these people and make sure that the junior paramedics are working with experienced paramedics. So right now, we've sent some people to paramedic school. It sounds great. We have 7 people that become paramedics. We can't just say, good luck, throw them on the ambulance. It's not like it used to be 20 years ago. The oversight for what we do in the field is a lot stronger. I'll put in perspective, one of the statistics that our medical director, Dr. Thornton, has shared with us. There's a statistic where they look at the survivability of cardiac arrest patients. In the field, cardiac arrest patients, of patients who are viable. So what that means is you're not an elderly person who goes into cardiac arrest, you're somebody that's less than 50 that has a shot at a survival. The statistics for that resuscitation success, we're at over 40%. It's actually mind-blowing. It's quite possibly the best in New England. It's that good. That is because of the number of paramedics the training that they have, and what we're providing. So we do have, without a doubt, the best EMS system probably within 20 miles. It's not even really debatable. If we don't continue to have a plan, it's going to fall apart.
Ms. Gould, you're sitting in the council chair.
I know, I apologize, but you said I could sit here today.
Yes.
So I just have, because I think the question at least needs to be asked, and I don't think you could answer it. Maybe you can, right off the top of your head, but, so to me, it begs the question, should we outsource ambulance service?
No.
Like, what's the benefit? Because, I mean, if you're
No,
sitting at home and you're watching
Yep,
this,
yep.
and you're thinking
I
of
get that question a lot,
cost and
and
stuff.
That's
I've
what I
worked for
just wrote
private,
down. Very good.
I've worked for private ambulance service. I have friends that work for private ambulance service. There's two problems with that. One, our paramedics are cross-trained, our firefighters and paramedics are cross-trained. So if we didn't run the EMS service, we still need the same number of firefighters as we have. Okay, our ISO rating has gone, in the last 10 years, ISO is an insurance services organization, you know what that rating is, I'm sure, which it affects your insurance rates.
So how does a city like Taunton get away with privatized ambulance service?
How do they get away with it? They don't want to. It's actually costing them money. They're actually, every year they try to take it over. It always ends up being a fight, but Taunton's one of the few that still does a private EMS service. They still do them down the Cape. Most of the time you have a private EMS service is because unions are opposed to actually taking on ancillary duties. In Attleboro, it's never been an issue. We've always done the EMS. Private EMS, I mean, I could give you all the data, everything that you would ever want to see, but it's actually not in the city's best interest financially to have a private EMS company. We generate $3.2 million a year. If the city said to me, you get all of that money and just run EMS with it, and the city funded the fire side of it, there'd be no problem. Zero problem. The risk would be we use those people as firefighters. So the risk for us is if you don't have the money, it's not just that you can't provide EMS, but the bigger risk is now you can't provide a certain level of fire protection because we use those people at fires. That's the difference.
All set?
Yeah, I just think people need to hear that they actually think about it.
I agree.
Oh,
We've had that conversation before, it's like, it wouldn't really save you any money, you still need to staff the fire department.
Anyone else got questions for the chief?
I have a quick one.
Yes.
Back to the vehicles. Am I correct in understanding that the hybrid will apply to the fire department?
I believe you're right.
Yes, they do.
Yep. It's not mandated. If it's a first response vehicle, it doesn't have to be hybrid, it just has to be fuel efficient. There are non-hybrid vehicles that do meet that criteria. The concern is that if you're gonna ever hand them down to other departments, that you can't get vehicles that are not hybrid. So it's not really an issue to us getting a hybrid, other than it's 10 grand more.
Yeah, because you're just passing them down inside the department until they're dead.
Correct, right.
Does that answer your question, Counselor?
Well, yeah, that was one, and the price differential, you had mentioned, I thought you said a $10,000 price?
Yeah, it's just about 10 grand. It had to do with the base packaging of the model. So when you get to the hybrid model of the police interceptor vehicle, there's certain things that you can't get or you have to get, and by the time you add it all together, you're looking at almost another $10,000.
And then to have the mechanical work done, there'd have to be an educational process?
Yeah, I would imagine that we would probably just send that out.
They don't have a mechanic
Yeah, they
already.
don't.
There's no mechanic system, so it would have to go up.
Yeah, okay,
All set?
that's it.
Thank you, chief.
Thank you. Do you have any other questions? You know where we are.
We'll be looking for that spreadsheet on the maintenance.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you. Next up is recreation, and recreation is on page 89.
Hey, Dan. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
We're right on schedule.
Perfect.
Good evening.
Good evening, Dennis.
Hello,
Thank you for joining
Dennis.
us. I have to inform you of the same preface that I inform all our guests that this meeting is actually a continuation of a first meeting that happened last Wednesday, and we've been talking to department heads, and the first person we talked to was the mayor, and I'm glad we did because he informed us that our $500,000 capital improvements budget has been wiped out for this budgeting process. So that if there are going to be capital improvement projects funded in his mind, it will not occur until October when the free cash is certified by the state. To which I responded that, well, the council approves your budget, and if we cut $500,000, it might be there for a line item in the capital improvement budget. So that's yet to be seen, what's gonna play down the road. And there are joint meetings between the Budget and Administration Committee on the council, which is Jay Delisio, Council Cobus, and myself, together with the Capital Improvements Committee, which is Council Waterman, Council Dolan, and myself. We've had one meeting, we're going to try to get another one done in the end of February, beginning of March, to discuss get a better understanding of the debt service and the funding issues with the budget. And that is why I've invited Deborah Gould to join us this year, and she has proven to be a tremendous contributor to our process, which, by the way, is the first time in my history as a council that we actually have a book on time per the charter. So we're all excited to have a book on time with the charter, and really depressed that we don't have any money. That concludes my opening remarks. And so as a result of having no money, Dennis, we're only looking at urgent items, because there is no money. And of course, you start with repairing the basketball court at Ponce and Hewlett, which my question is, what's going to happen if they don't get repaired?
Well, if they don't get repaired, I think we could make it until the next fiscal year, until October. I think when I met with the mayor, he did tell me the same thing, that there wouldn't be funds available until next fall, when free cash was certified. So this is my #1 priority then. I had the basketball courts at Ponce and Hewitt as a priority 1/urgent, and I think what I had originally stated to Gary Eurasian was that if they don't get done this spring, they'll become urgent by the end of the season here. So they'll definitely be urgent by then, and the price that's listed here is actually the price to totally rehab the basketball court there.
So I'm guessing that the mayor said to you, if you could only fund 5 things, what would they be? Did he say that to you?
He did not say that, no.
So in the end, repairing basketball courts were your #1 priority, but
Well, because
now
it's a potential safety issue with, someone tripping and
Yep,
there would be
yep.
cracks, et cetera. So the urgents I have are the basketball court there at Ponce and Hewitt, and also a basketball court down in South Attleboro at Conley Playground, which is not quite as bad as Ponce and Hewitt, but is.
Yeah, that's on page 92. And I was wondering if that $15,000 was a typo.
That is not a typo. That is to do the crack seal, crack fill, and seal coat over it. But as you mentioned, the capital projects was done a little earlier this year, so kind of got lost between Gary and I, was that I went back out and got prices to both. I had prices to do the crack fill and seal. I now have prices for that option, and also the option for the total rehab. And the option for the total rehab on that is $22,409.
102,409?
Up $22,409. And I had a quote on the Ponce and Hewitt, and what I did was there's 65% of the square footage in Conley Playground as there is at Ponce and Hewitt, so I based it on 65% of that.
Any economy in doing those together?
I don't think
With
so.
a single vendor?
I think they, sometimes if they can only come for one day or something, but they're separate places, separate locations, they couldn't do it in one day. So I don't think there's any economy of scale.
In reading your chapter, the roof repair of the building at Spatcher, I question the #1 priority and question whether or not it should be urgent, because you've got an existing minor leak there that is, that's a beautiful facility just rebuilt by the state, and you've already got a leak.
Well, sometimes we think it was just rebuilt by the state, but it was going on 10 years.
Oh my God.
Time flies. But as part of that rehab, they did not redo the roofs of either the filter building or of what we call the guard room. And the state has actually, we work through DCR. We have a contract with DCR to oversee the pool for them. They own the pool, we manage it. Anything over $10,000, they are supposed to take care of the repairs. So I think on there it said, Gary has it both city and state, but it really should be the state. And we're trying to work with DCR to see if it's something that they would do this before we open this summer.
Thank you for clearing that up. Going to the Twin Village Pool Bathhouse Filter Room repair. That too is over $10,000. Would that also be for state funding?
What page are you on?
I'm on page 92, Twin Village Pool Bathhouse Filter Room.
Okay, so this is
Oh, this is a design.
the design for a new pool, and then another project is the replacement of the pool there.
So is this state-owned?
No, that's a city-owned pool.
Uh,
We own the Briggs Pool on the east side, and the Hilda B. Stone Pool down in the Dodgeville section, and the state owns the third pool. And as you can see the notes there, that there were reports done back in 2000 and 2001 that voiced concern about the pool. So it's kind of a sister pool to South Attleboro Pool, the Liddell Pool, but it was further gone than the South Attleboro Pool. We had no chance, South Attleboro was further gone. We had no chance of rehabbing that pool. That's why we closed it prior to opening this summer.
Well, when that gets done, that's obviously going to be a bond because it's $1 million plus project. It probably makes sense to roll that all together. And that brings us to, I believe, vehicles. Which are, hold on, I'm getting there. Page 100. I think we have just funded the Ford F-350, correct?
You funded, we replaced the Ford Ranger, which was a 2003 Ford Ranger, and we're replacing that with a F-150. And we went through back and forth with the mayor and Mike Tyler of DPW about, because they wanted all 350s, but in this case, they allowed us to go with the 150 because it's basically, first of all, the one we have is a Ranger, so it's a size up, and
Is the Ranger Recreation 8?
probably is. Cliffy, I don't know exactly Cliffy's numbers. Ford Ranger was, basically it's our trash truck, the truck that we just go facility to facility, picking up our 80 barrels of trash every day. So we didn't want a F-350.
Is that the vehicle you got from the police department?
No, that's
No.
we have an Expedition that we got from the police department in
Okay.
2014.
That answers my question. So that Expedition is Recreation 8, that's not been funded. And that's the one that has 117,000 miles on it.
Correct. And it's a sister vehicle to the one that I believe you just replaced recently for Department of Public Works. We both, Public Works grabbed one and I grabbed one off of the surplus list in 2014 from the police department.
So this one passed the inspection, the last inspection with flying colors?
I wouldn't say flying colors, no. It's just about ready for Fred Flintstone to operate.
Yeah.
The undercarriage on most of our vehicles, that's what really does them in, with the salt, etc.
DPW has a good welder and extra signs.
We have
They
Rec
usually
2 that
use-
they just did today, which came out beautifully. They did a great job.
What did they do?
So of the two, that's the one that you'd like to fund, the one to replace Recreation 8,
The Expedition, yeah.
right, the Expedition. Anyone else have any questions for Mr. Walsh?
Back to the bleachers, I know that's number one. I've experienced the bleachers a little bit myself. They're gonna be getting a lot more use the next few years with the
Can you tell me
baseball
where you
team.
are in the book?
Ah, is that the first page?
89.
89. I wonder if you could share, one's pretty high. What kind of shape, in your opinion, are those bleachers in?
Well, I have them as a number one priority, so that tells me that, you can go 3, 2, 1 or urgent, so they're getting close to urgent. We send our crew out there 3 times a year to check all of the nuts and bolts, et cetera, and make sure that they're safe and secure. You're alluding to the baseball.
Yeah, that's
Bleachers.
what you're referring to, right?
Baseball, also the football ones, because we used to have Pop Warner and Whitehawks, and now they've combined, they've merged together, and they're now playing, they used to play some practice in South Attleboro, some at Attleboro at Haywood Field. They all practice together now at Haywood Field, all the football is together. And they want to play more games at Haywood Field. So I'm concerned about the football stands as well.
So those bleachers are, refresh my memory, they're solid aluminum, or are they aluminum with boards?
Solid aluminum.
Solid aluminum. And how old are they?
Well, they were there when my kids played, and that was a long
Yeah,
time
they've been there a
ago.
long time.
They have.
And are you thinking that you want to add to them or replace them?
No, replace.
And is there a substantial difference between bleachers that are designed and made today versus those bleachers?
I'm not sure there's much difference except for the handicapped accessibility aspect of them, where you would have to have the ramp coming up.
And in that regard, could we get a smaller additional bleacher that is handicap accessible?
We could, but I think the bleachers that we have are going to need to be replaced. So to combine the handicap accessibility part to these is probably overall a less expensive route.
How do we tell the bleachers made out of aluminum are not safe? I don't know.
We go and check the
Go
nuts and
test 'em.
bolts, et cetera, you know?
You'll get a big guy like me to go jump on them, right?
Yeah.
And when they wiggle, you know you're gonna crash.
Yeah, no one wants
Generally,
to be
if there's a
there, right?
concern, we hear it from a parent.
Councilman Wyman, you all set on bleachers?
Yeah, I am.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions for Dennis? Any parting shots?
No parting shots. They're not here at the school, right? I'll go over a few things that I have, if that's all
I
right.
would like to hear it.
First of all, I wanted to thank you we actually funded a number of projects last year. So we did the gutter on the north side of the building, Twin Village Pool. In order to open this year, we had to do a lot of work to the equalizer covers, the flow meter, and the drains. So we brought that up to code with respect to those. As I mentioned, DCR has been helpful with the Spatcher Pool, and they did a number of filter room repairs over there before opening for the summer of 2019, as well as the pool floor and the walls. It's one of the nice things about having this agreement with the DCR, with the state, is because we've seen parts of the new floor that's 10 years old start to chip, et cetera, and start to come up a little bit. So they take care of all those issues, which is nice. We just completed the Tilda B Stone, which some folks call Dodgeville. The second soccer field up top, we just finished that second project up there, so the upper fields now are totally rehabbed, and it's very expensive to do, particularly with the prevailing wage. And not really a recreation project, but we do have 4 new tennis courts over at Finberg Field, which were part of the environmental cleanup of the facility over there. So we got quite a bit done last year, and we're thankful of that. But still, I have the largest CIP list in the city, I believe.
Yes, you did.
13 or 14 pages.
Well, you and the fire department were kind of like a close tie.
Okay. The reason we have so many is we have 17 facilities that we take care of. We have 100+ acres, 17 baseball/softball fields, 15 basketball courts, 10 soccer fields, 10 playgrounds, walking paths, football fields, lacrosse, etc. So sometimes folks just go and they go to their little local park that they enjoy so much, but they don't realize there is so much, throughout the city. And Mayor Dumas had started shortly after I became recreation director, kind of a rehab program where we've got really a lot of the fields, et cetera, into real good shape, and now we're moving into maintenance end of it. And
I saw that you have irrigation plans for Willett Field, and I was wondering where you were planning on getting the water for that.
Well, I had discussions about getting the water from the river, but I guess that's not viable. So I talked to Dave Perry of Lisco Irrigation, and it would be a pump. It would be a well with a pump down near the field on the other side over by where the, I don't know what it's called, something court housing complex there.
River Court.
River Court. So that's part of the price tag for that I have in there. And that brings up an important point, because I'm getting, believe it or not, I'm starting to wind down on my career here. And the 2 things I would like to see done in the next 4 to 5 years is there are only 2 facilities that do not have irrigation now. One is Willett Field, which, although it's a school property, a school field, we maintain that. It's the one school field that we maintain. There's no irrigation there, and there's no irrigation down at what the official name is Owsley. Most people call it the Hebronville field. It's where softball was for many, many years. Last year, the softball folks couldn't get enough participants, so they didn't have their season. And then I brought it to the rec commission and said, you know, what do we think we might want to do with this field? And we put it up to the youth groups and said, who would want to partner with us to turn this into a facility for themselves? And in the end, it was Attleboro Youth Soccer said that they would like to partner with us. So we're starting plans now with Attleboro Youth Soccer to transform that from a softball facility over to a soccer facility. And they loved the idea of having lights, and they could potentially play night games. But again, there's no sense doing anything there without irrigation. There's no sense, and you know, you're just kind of turning your wheels if you don't have irrigation. And that's why I think we have the best facilities around by far, thanks to Cliff and Steve and Ronnie and the
Dennis,
guys.
I've been around long enough to remember what the fields looked like before you started in your current role, and I think I've complimented you every year, and I won't embarrass you by complimenting you again. You're doing a great job. The number of participants in all the programs that you carry throughout the city is an incredible number. I don't know what it is, but I'm sure it's beyond 25,000, 30,000 participants. It's enormous. And I see it driving by the fields. And when one field closes down, like the high school, it puts pressure on all the others. And I understand that. I think you're doing a great job. I believe that irrigation is a real turning point in keeping those fields in top condition, and you've proven it with the fields that have received irrigation. They're standing up to the use much better than they used to.
So
If you
these
could
are the
just
only-
shoot, if you could just shoot geese, everything would be all right.
I wouldn't want to tell you how much we spend per year chasing the geese.
Yeah, I know.
But you mentioned the high school, the high school renovation. So all of Attleboro High School soccer is now played on our fields. All of the boys varsity, JV, and freshmen, girls varsity, JV, and freshmen, as well as last year it was the varsity baseball. This year it will be varsity, JV, and freshman baseball will all be over at Hayward Field, Hayward/Walsh. And all of softball will be down at South Attleboro Veterans Memorial Park, what folks call Lee's Pond, for all their practices and home games. So you'll see in my budget request this year, I've asked for a bump up in my rec grounds accounts, et cetera, because, you know, it's difficult to keep up with it the way we used to, because the wear and tear, the wear and tear of Ponce and Hewitt this last year with the high school soccer. It's a lot different when you have high school age kids on the fields than you do, you know, kids in the 3rd and 4th grade and 6th and 7th grade. So
Terrific. Anyone got any questions for Dennis?
I just have a
Yes.
question for
Go right ahead,
Deb.
Councilor Jackson.
I think it's for Deb. So after what Dennis just said about in the high school now is using all the fields, can we put a lot, no, I don't even know how to ask this question. Can we get some money from the school since they don't have to pay for the maintenance?
Deb, can I answer that?
Go ahead, Dennis.
I think to be fair to the schools, our youth leagues use a lot of their fields as well. So it's kind of, we work hand in hand, so that Attleboro Youth Soccer always used the soccer field over by Brennan Middle School. The youth leagues use their baseball fields for years, et cetera. So I think it's kind of come home to roost now that it's our time to kind of share with them, I think, to a certain extent.
Okay.
And I work very well with Mark Hool, and you know, we do the best we can, you know,
Yeah.
with what we have. Now, if you can squeeze a little money out of them for us, that'd be okay, but I wouldn't feel right asking for it after they've been so good to us all these
They're
years.
only 10 million short, Councilor.
I'm not afraid to ask.
Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you all. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Dennis. Page 101.
No.
Now we're waiting for
no.
the school.
Hang out, Dennis.
Not close.
I am moving right now.
School and wastewater are left, and school department is on page 101.
They get a little more time if they want. We should.
I gotta fly out of here.
While we have a little moment here, councils, thank you. Council Waterman, Council Dolan, I would like to schedule a meeting to analyze what we've heard here and to draft a document for the council.
Okay.
Can you tell me what your availability is so that I can inform
How
Virginia?
soon?
Well, it has to be a 48-hour notice because it's a public meeting, so it has to be,
Well, we met last Wednesday.
I'd like to scratch this week. I really don't want another meeting this week.
No, I was gonna suggest next week.
no, not this week.
We
Okay.
have 3 meetings already this week.
Right. So tomorrow night, we'll have our public hearing. So maybe,
The
Monday or-
10th?
Monday or Wednesday of next week.
The 10th?
is it the 10th?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I can do that.
You can do the 10th? What time would you like to meet?
Okay.
6 o'clock?
Well, okay, I can just barely make that, but
I'll make 6:30
I
to be
have-
more comfortable. I don't want to rush you.
no, I'll be here. I have a meeting at Warren's from 5 to 6. I leave at 5 or 6. I'll
Okay.
come right here.
6?
Sure. The 10th at 6.
10th at 6. I will inform Virginia, and we'll do February 10th at 6 p.m.
In the annex room?
to draft our message to the council. That'd be great.
What's the date of that, February what?
February 10.
And 6 p.m.
Welcome, Mr. Furtado. Nice to see you.
Well, Mr. Conti.
We're on page 101. A brief recap I've been giving everybody who appears before the Capital Improvement Committee meeting is that for the first time in my career as a city councilor, I got the book in time per charter. And the first meeting we had with the mayor, he announced that the $500,000 in the capital improvement budget had been cut. So we have goose egg. And that he would entertain capital improvement projects after free cash was certified in October, when the state certifies free cash, which is the same story that we've heard ever since I've been a counselor. So, I informed him that the council's approved his budget, and if we cut $500,000 out of his budget, it would probably be nice to see that put back in the capital improvement programs. We'll see what happens. There's much more to be done. So, as a result of the budget cuts and the unknowns in the budget, we're only discussing urgent items.
Sure.
And that'll also shorten our meeting with you so that we can discuss and make sure that we understand that all your urgent items, none are new. So I think we can start with replacing the original air conditioning units at Hill Roberts. The question I had was that through your capital improvements program, you've got 6 air conditioning units across the system. Is it a good idea to look at all those in one thing and do them as a large project?
Sure. Let me provide some background. We just finished a performance contract procurement process and have selected. We got 3 responses to our request for quotes. Not quotes. Request for proposals, and out of the 3, we selected one, myself and our facilities director, Jason Parento, which we'll be bringing to the finance committee of the school committee on Wednesday. So many of these urgent projects, and practically all of them that have to do with environmental conditions and conditioning overall, are going to be part of that effort if the school committee approves, and obviously if the municipal council approves. So the next step in our process, aside from getting school committee approval, will be to negotiate an audit with the firm that was selected, who will then go out, look at all the equipment firsthand, understand how that equipment kind of stacks up with today's technology and today's approach, and give us basically a proposal, an overview of our current state of affairs, what they can do, and what the physical impacts of that would be. So their challenge, if you will, is that they have up to 20 years to provide us guaranteed savings to pay for whatever projects it is they propose. So there's no funding that comes from the school district or the city to pay for this up front. It's paid for out of our operating budget from our existing budgets for, say, utilities. So if I propose to you, we're going to save you some electricity, those electricity savings will pay for the work I'm going to do over the course of the 20 years. So we have about something between $2 and $4 million worth of projects that could fit into that paradigm. Most of them are so I just wanted to provide that to you before moving forward. So
that's wonderful news. Congratulations. That is a great proposal. I mean, that's very smart, and I like it.
It's driven by necessity. We aren't sure that some of our air conditioning systems are actually going to work this summer. We're never sure. I don't think that's anything new, but we're particularly concerned this summer with systems at Thatcher, which have been kind of scotch taped and paper clipped for the last 2 or 3 years, and you know, at some point you're gonna face the music, and we know that's coming.
So what was the name of that vendor again? I'm sorry.
We selected Train from our evaluation of the proposals. The school committee has not made a decision on that yet.
Right. And it's called a progressive service contract?
Performance contract. So they guarantee a physical performance from the work they do to pay the bill. So if the systems and the work they do not return what they claim they're going to return, that liability is on them, not on us.
Excellent. So that takes care of the air conditioning units.
Yes, sir.
Unfortunately, we'll come up with a similar plan for the parking lot.
We have not. We have not. The parking lots identified in our capital improvement plan are all, you know, they've all failed. It's not a question of them not failing. And, you know, I'm sure you know from other city experience that with parking lots, if you leave them unattended when they fail, the damage gets much more severe. You know, the stuff happening underneath the surface starts to accelerate, and you know, you end up with sinkholes, as we did over at Studley, and other more significant problems. So I believe it was you in the council who suggested this be something where we combine our efforts with the city and you know, leverage that kind of volume with purchasing blacktop and that sort of stuff. Mike Tyler has been part of our evaluation and estimation for all of these projects, and is on board with the numbers we've presented to the council for these things.
So the numbers are real.
The numbers are real.
Good. Deb?
Specifically, on page 101, the repair and resurface of the parking lot, that's listed as urgent, the $50,000 is part of the $180,000 pending before the municipal council.
Yes.
That was forwarded to the council in October of 2019 that has not been voted out. So I don't know if there was additional information that the council wanted, but there's a couple of items in here that are
That status.
are in that status.
Must be in budget and appropriations? It's done in capital
I
improvements?
just want to let you know that I think the floors, which I'm sure you'll get to because it's the very next item, and there had been some going back and forth. I think there was a request for additional information from the
That's in- that-
council.
Yeah, that's in the capital. We'll get to that next.
Okay, but that particular $180,000 is my understanding that is a pending item. I checked the mayor's office. Mark and I, like all the other folks you're bringing in, Mark and I talked on Friday at length, and that I had to go back and look because Mark's like, that's been approved. I'm like, Mark, I don't have it. It's voted. And the, mayor's office, the same thing, they have it as pending here. I just, so I'm not sure
I will
what-
check into that.
Okay.
I will
And
check
if
into
there's
that.
some information that you need from either the school or my office, we'd be happy to get it to you, it's just,
So that, yeah, that 180,000 is made up of the road work for Hyman Fine, for Hill Roberts, and for Thatcher.
and I think based on the CIP, you're now 10,000 short, right? When we did the math?
Again, Mike has said we could probably get through with what we have.
Okay, based on the proposal to the council, the 180?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Good. Is there a financial consequence to the delay in school?
I'm not sure I understand the question. The 180 was earmarked, was sent down in October.
So do you earmark that when that comes down? No, not until it gets voted.
We track what's pending, the mayor's office does, and we do as well. We have a sheet because if, when I review a draft of the next communication, if all of a sudden they would double using money, I'd be like, oh, wait, but we don't actually do anything until it's voted.
Okay. So that looks very positive. Let's talk about floors.
Sure.
Last time we met, Jason, if you want to join the table, go right ahead.
Come on up, Jason.
Yeah, throw tomatoes at you.
No, not to throw tomatoes, unless they're coming this way. We had a very constructive meeting the last time we were together. What's happened since?
We've again, we were in the middle of our testing at that point. We've completed testing both material and air. We spent a total of about $5,000 or $6,000 out of our operating budget to do so, and very fortunately, kind of cleared all the hurdles. So we're in good shape from that perspective. Where we're facing a challenge is to to replace what's there, to take up what's there and put something else down. Is a pretty significant process in terms of disposing of what's there. That's turned out to be kind of an extraordinary thing. We talked to half a dozen vendors. We had about half of those, about 3, tell us that they would give us proposals, and we ended up with one vendor excuse me, willing to take on that challenge. It is not something that is normally done. So to do it turned out to be a number, and we don't have a final number because it's depending on how many, containers of material are disposed, how many trips that is, and but it's somewhere between $150,000 and $175,000 per building.
Yep.
To take up and dispose of the existing floor. We have multiple proposals on putting down a wood floor in its place, and that number is, the lowest number is around $95,000, which would make the cost of each building somewhere around $250,000, $260,000. The earlier proposals were for similar or the identical material that's down, and that process is typically to seal up what is already there and put a 5 or 6 or 7 millimeter layer down on top of that. To do that work would require a little bit of alteration on the thresholds coming into the room, because that raises the floor by that much. We'd have to adjust the baskets by that much, and that effort would be somewhere around $120,000 for sort of the good stuff, and $95,000 for something that we're not as impressed with.
And as we discussed in our last meeting, the guarantee on that flooring is only 10 years.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
Right. So I have it in my committee to get you new floors. The motion I have is for, I think, $140,000.
That's what we.
I'm gonna change that, to bring it out to my committee to a number that I think that they're gonna agree to. What is the school's preference?
Well, I think, in talking to the kind of the staff and the educators, they were excited about a wood floor, but there's a, kind of a very sober appreciation for the discrepancy in the costs. So.
If I can just interrupt you.
Sure.
Is that we've got a wood floor that's $250,000 to $260,000.
Yep.
That is almost twice as much as a floor that's only guaranteed for 10 years.
Yes, sir.
And a wood floor is going to last more than twice the time that the laminate's going to. So it's simply an expenditure level issue,
Yes.
right? Which I would like to see us get over.
We
So,
would be thrilled with that outcome.
okay, that's what I wanted to hear. Thank you. That's what I was waiting for. Okay. Yes, Councilor
Just, you started to say something regarding the cost of a wood floor. Do you
I
have any
was
idea?
actually just thinking out loud.
Length of time.
The length of time on a wood gymnasium floor is generally 50 to 70 years
Wow.
of effective use
I was right.
With good care, yeah.
with good care.
Ms. Gould.
Yes. Good care is annual resurfacing
Exactly what we're doing now
to the Mondo floor?
to the existing hardwood floors throughout the district. So
In
proper
this
cleaning
building.
process and
In the two buildings that you have this particular, so Mondo is the spongy
Rubber,
surface, the
yeah.
rubber surface. So what's the annual maintenance cost there compared to the resurfacing?
that's done in-house, and that's just an auto scrubber or general cleaning practices.
Okay.
The hardwood isn't, is a little bit more extensive. There's just a screening of the top coat of polyurethane, the finish, similar to a polyurethane product, and a recoating. And that can, generally is a few $1,000s.
The logistics of ripping out an existing floor and putting in a hardwood floor. Summer work.
Yes.
You,
That would be very, very difficult work.
Approximately 3 weeks per school.
okay. Can I just make a comment?
Floor is
So,
yours.
I did talk to the mayor about this project today because it was pending, and I did ask him, I said, what is your understanding of what this project is? He basically shared with me that the ball is in the council's court, that you would have to return a matter to him for consideration. If you're gonna reject the funding request that's in front of you, or make a recommendation, he is open to suggestions. The numbers though, you'd need an additional 390 above what is presented already, right?
No.
So if you're
no,
looking at,
they
you're
would
looking
need-
at the low end,
You need 210,000 more.
you need to remove the cost is something between 150 and 175,000 per
Perfect.
floor.
Yeah.
So on the low end, it's 300,000 to remove. On the high end, it's 350 to remove. The replacement of the floor, hardwood install numbers, on the low end is 90, on the high end is 95, all in, surfacing everything, right? So on the high end, you'd be 180 if it's 95, because we know we never get everything low, right? Let's face it, right?
So that's 190, yeah.
So 190, I apologize, thank you. So 190, so the new cost of the project would be 540, and you have before you 280, sir, or is
Yes.
it 180?
They're ready.
So 540, 280. So you'd be looking for another 260.
Yes,
Okay.
to go to wood.
Right, and I understand your point. Your point is 10-year floor, 50, 60, 70-year floor,
Correct.
major investment up front. Hopefully it would last longer.
Correct. And so you're saying that the proper protocol is to return my motion for 140 for each school back to the mayor
Right, because you can't
for
increase.
reconsideration,
Right,
because
you-
I cannot
You
increase.
cannot increase the 140 to the amount.
Thank you.
Or you, I don't know, sir, if you'd have to return your existing motion or continue to keep it tabled and ask for him to return it with higher funds. I think I can follow up with the administration to find out specifically what you'd need to include.
Okay,
But you already have that in committee, so you don't have to
Yes.
necessarily do that through the CIP process.
Yes.
You could act on that
okay,
outside of.
Very
Because if
good.
you're looking at, and depending on what the administration wants to do, if he doesn't have the money, the reason I asked about timing is if it's a summer project, right? I don't know how you could get it on a borrowing. I don't know if he has an extra $260,000 lying around in free cash to support the whole thing. I don't know what your position would be on one now and then one funding in the fall, so that you could do it, immediately after school.
this was a
closes.
joint quote, correct? Your numbers are that both floors are being done by the same company at the same time?
Yes.
Yeah, so this is a one-deal package. Both schools
He's
get.
gonna have to bid this formally.
Yes, but it's gonna be bid as a one project for two schools. The bid is gonna be for two schools.
Right, but you have to have the money.
Right, have to have the money
So,
first.
But if the bid is for two schools, why does it have to be done at the exact same time?
It doesn't, it's up
Usually
to them
economies
on
of
with how they wanna do it.
Say that again?
Usually it's the economies of scale. Usually when a vendor is bidding both, it's because they save on mobilization costs, they save on insurances, they save on those types of things. So it's typically beneficial for that vendor to package it into one, because they realize the cost savings which they send on to the city. And it makes it more practical for them to do the bid. I'm just letting you know that the increase in cost, we can have a discussion with the administration to see if they have the availability to fund all of it now. Because once you're at, $540,000 project, right? Your worst case scenario, you have no contingency in your number.
Correct.
Your discussion is estimated removal amounts. Do you need an LSP for this because it's of the material? Licensed site removal person because of the
Yes.
material? That's not in your price, right?
It is.
It is? Okay, thanks.
So, to continue this discussion, I'd like to call the school committee finance chairman to the committee. Would you please step forward, grab a chair and join the table, Bill?
I wanted to add one comment to it if I could, Mr. Chairman. I think the majority of us are all in favor, but I'm speaking for myself, about pulling the floor up, putting the new floor down, because putting a brand new floor over material that's already starting to break down, it's like paving over cracked concrete. I mean, it doesn't make any sense, so, it's just one other element to think about, so, thank you.
We're all in agreement with you. Thank you for your comments and contribution. So, I will make in my notes that I need to return that motion to the mayor requesting higher funds, of $260,000 to present to my committee, wood rather than Mondo floors. And that takes us to
I need to find that. That's making me crazy.
you need to find,
I need to find the parking lot money.
parking lot money is in with DPW.
She said it was in capital, the 180
Pending.
from,
Yeah, I don't think it's in, I don't think it's in your committee, your licenses.
I know that.
I think it's in budget and administration.
We'll check the docket.
Yeah, yeah.
We'll check I'll follow up. with,
Should be on the
I'm
docket.
wondering if it
I
got,
just didn't know if you had questions about why, like if you had held it
no,
in committee.
I didn't, so that's why it's making me crazy that I need to find if it just got dropped somehow.
So, in the train contract, that would include the energy management systems,
Yes, sir.
good, and the cooling towers,
Yes.
and univents, and, but not the skylight system, correct?
It could, depending on.
At Thatcher. At
How
Thatcher.
they have a box they have to work in, so, if you realize extraordinary savings opportunities, you can put in building envelope things like the skylights, because there's room in that guarantee to accommodate that cost. So it's not impossible, but it's not likely, but it's not
So is
impossible.
that your plan?
We are going to absorb every dime we can, based on what they find.
Why not?
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
It just makes sense.
Yep.
Okay, good.
If you look at Dayton and Rehoboth, they're in the middle of doing this now, and they've done building envelope things, they've done windows, they've done parking lot, solar, canopies, and all kinds of things.
Okay, good. You know, I remember watching the World School get built, and now we need to repair the building facade.
Yeah.
And that is something that I could not see just by driving by.
What year was that built?
Let's see, I was living on Watson Avenue right across the street when it was getting built.
Because I went to that school, so it was a long time ago.
Well, I had a nice copper whale on the finial that's been missing now for several years.
We have it.
You have it.
We have it.
I thought someone stole it.
It's at his house.
That looks great.
I drove by and I couldn't see from the outside the problem with the gym.
There's been some water penetration at the facade, at the gymnasium entrance, and also at the main entrance. There's been a little bit of penetration behind the window systems that it's made its way down behind the actual facade where some of the lettering is on the front of the building, and also on the gym side, and actually around on the playground side.
So this is water to the interior, which is a mildew potential?
Potentially, yes. Right now, the finish was just, it looks to be just some plywood that was painted over. So we'd like to go
doesn't
back with
surprise
a
me.
more, with a more permanent solution and to make sure that it's waterproofed.
Has that been tested for mildew?
Because it's outside, we haven't had any mildew issues in the building interior. On the outside, we're not seeing anything obvious, so we haven't gone forward with any testing.
And it's beyond a decorative issue, it's actually going to cause
Unfortunately,
deterioration.
yes.
Okay. Those concrete walkways at Willett, you have as a priority one, but because of safety reasons, I thought that would be more of an urgent issue.
We had done some patching, so they're kind of holding together at this point.
So it's holding together okay?
For now, but I think as we move forward, we'll be looking at it.
That's good. That's good because we have no money. The Brennan Middle School, we're repairing the roof. We've already passed that bond. And the energy management system is on your train.
Yes, sir.
And the repair of the building's interior is in the bond, isn't it?
Yes.
So that's covered as well.
Part of the
I'm on
estimate.
page
When
110.
did you pass the bond? Last Tuesday? Or is it I thought the public hearing for that was tomorrow night.
You're right, the public hearing is tomorrow night.
Okay, so that bond
I know
hasn't.
my counsel, it's passed.
Okay, all right, sorry.
Okay.
I'm like, oh, I missed it.
Well, it's on the fast track.
Okay, can I just make one comment?
Sure.
So just keep in mind, because it's been an issue lately with folks as bonds authorizations happen. I need 30 days. I can't sign anything for 30 days from the date of the vote. Okay, so people want to execute contracts the day after an authorization, they can't. 30
Yeah,
days.
we haven't, we are meeting on the 5th, Wednesday, to talk about shortlisting OPMs. Interviews would be on the 19th, so they wouldn't even be ready for a month to do that with the project manager, and then there'll be a similar process for the designer in March, and then after those two hurdles, there'll be an effort to hire a contractor. So we're a solid 2.5 to 3 months away from a contractor. The OPM's contract would be kind of teed up in 3 to 4 weeks. Not executed,
Right, but
ready to go.
Right, but the public hearing is tomorrow night. I don't know when the vote would be. And then you're, after the vote, 48 hours for the mayor to sign it at the earliest, and then no earlier than 30 days after that for something to even be presented for signature. So I just want you to keep that in mind.
Sure.
I'm just scanning school roof, okay. It's on the list for temporary borrowing based on the debt exclusion stuff. Okay, sorry, I just wanted to make sure it was on the list. Thank you.
At Coelho, are you gonna try to sneak the water filters into the drain?
The bubblers,
Oh, I'm sorry, that's priority two.
those have been installed.
That's done.
Yes, sir.
Warm Sutter's exterior, we're taking care of that with the bond. It's a public hearing tomorrow night. And that brings us to 114, the system-wide, of which there is no urgent.
Not urgent, but I think the discussion on the time sensitivity of the vans is warranted, given that depending on what the school intends to do, it might become a matter of the 21 budget before the council. If you would elaborate.
Yeah, our current fleet, which is, remarkably better than our prior fleet, we made the 5th and final lease payment on in August. So at the end of this fiscal year, approximately, the lease expires. And at that point, we have to decide on, a couple of different things. If we wanted to turn the vehicles in, get some form of trade-in value and apply that toward a new lease for new vehicles, that's one path to go. In that event, it's almost guaranteed that the annual cost will come down, by some amount. Right now it's $51,000, so it's something less than that. A second option would be, they're in the kind of 50 to 60,000 mile range on the vehicle, so drive for free for 2 or 3 years, and then hope at that point that we can get funding reestablished for another lease, which we've been advised to not do that. So we will likely be coming to the council with a new lease proposal, sometime in the summer.
And so I agree, but let me ask you this. Right now, because they're leased vehicles, the maintenance cost is not on you, correct?
Right.
No, we pay, but the maintenance,
Like
again, relative to where we were,
Right.
we do practically
But if you
nothing.
drove for free, all of a sudden you're gonna have probably increased maintenance
We
costs,
will.
which are not in your existing plan.
Undoubtedly, we will have that, yes.
I just wanted to also mention that there's, when Mark and I went through this, there appeared to be a typo. E-rate has nothing to do with this.
Yes, I'm sorry
So the
about
school system says, as much E-rate funds as possible. That has nothing to do with this vehicle stuff. So the savings could be as much as 25% if they traded in the vehicles on the lease to help mitigate the future lease costs for brand-new vehicles that they'd acquire. So I think that, I certainly wanted to point this out because depending on what the school and the administration, mayor's office, move forward, it would potentially be a budget item, a capital lease, but not lease to own, or whatever the case may be. It's something that might be before you.
So 2 questions if you have the answer. One is, the registration on these is on the onus of the leasing company. So they're paying for the registration and the excise tax? No, none of that.
They're registered to the city.
Because it's city, registered to the city, that's all paid. The second thing is if they get into an accident, is that on the city policy?
Yes.
Yep, okay, good. I think that wraps it up.
I do have
Yep,
one item.
go right ahead.
I had the pleasure of having a tour of Studley recently.
What page are we
I
on?
realize this is a 1, but I don't know if that would.
Page 104?
Yeah, I think so, 104. Repairing the interior areas. And I was wondering if you might share with us what you shared with me, as best you can in the time slot you got.
Certainly. So Studley, of course, the roof was replaced there, I believe it was in 2011. shortly thereafter. The skylight system was replaced, all through the MSBA. One of the things that was not addressed as part of that was some of the staining that was a result of the roof leaks and the skylight leaks. What's interesting about Studley is that the roof deck is also your finished ceiling surface. So when the roof leaked, it wasn't leaking onto a ceiling tile that we could change. It was actually leaking and sort of forming these huge spots all over what was supposed to be a finished ceiling. So in many areas in the building, you have these very large brown, unsightly stains. In some cases, it stained the walls. And
Can I interrupt you? This is the cow wall system, correct?
the cow wall is the skylight.
Yep.
The ceiling texture, it's a cementitious wood fiber. It kind of looks like
So
shredded
that's
wheat.
below the cow wall?
No, it's actually in the classroom space where the cow wall is just in the atrium space.
Oh, okay.
So it's in those adjoining classrooms, the cafeteria, that we actually were able to paint a couple of years ago ourselves. But the resource center, all of those spaces show heavy staining. It's very obvious when you walk into any of the classrooms where.
And also in the offices.
Yes, very much so in the office.
Right.
So this is something that can't be covered up with kills?
It takes a little bit more than that because of the surface. It's a few coats. It's a heavier process. Just because, again, I hate to keep going back to that example, but it looks like shredded wheat, so it sort of absorbs the paint into it. So it takes a couple coats. You have to spray it. You can't really roll it on because it doesn't absorb. So it's a little bit of a tedious process from a preparation and finish process.
Architects.
So it's not the cow wall system that was leaking, it's the roof
Right.
that was leaking.
Right.
Correct. The cow wall system did have its problems, but because the system would just leak down onto the floor or the carpet, it didn't create some of the staining issues that we have in the classroom space.
So can I conclude that this is a cosmetic issue only?
We hope.
Yes.
Yes. You both agree, yes.
That we
Don't
hope.
agree.
No, I do agree that it's cosmetic, but it is quite unsightly in spots.
You know what? I'll make a point to go see it.
Thank you very much.
Yep, I will.
Can I just follow up with a question? Is this 55 to outsource it, or for the supplies for it to be done internally?
It would be outsourcing it.
Outsourcing?
Mhm.
And that's an all-in cost for
It is.
everything to be done?
Now, there would be some surfaces where we've done some painting. We do some regular painting as part of our maintenance program. So we have done some work in the building where we were able to, the cafeteria, the gymnasium entrance, those spaces.
So Jason, I'd like to visit Studley on a Friday afternoon. Who can I call?
You can give me a call. I'd be happy to take you through.
1:30 Studley, I'll meet you there.
Perfect.
Thank you. Friday at 1:30.
Thank you, Counselor.
You're welcome. Anything else for our visitors? Thank you both.
No, thank you for
Thank
that.
you.
I've enjoyed working with you this year. This has been, I like to go to your finance meetings when I can. I can't make as many as I'd like to, but they get more and more relevant towards the end of the year.
Yes, they do.
And I deeply appreciate what you do, Mr. Fidaro.
Thank
I
you.
think you're doing a great job.
Thank
Keep
you
it
very
up.
much.
Thank you. You're excused.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So next up is wastewater. And wastewater is on page right after school. Let me just,
1022, the committee, the 1022. Capital improvements,
I don't understand your comment.
October 22nd.
The 180, 1022, October 22nd, capital
what? Into what?
improvements, committee minutes, committee meeting was that 180K.
It didn't come into my committee.
Your capital improvements.
No, I don't have it on my docket.
I'm just telling you. Excuse me, sorry.
I have a memory of it myself.
It may have accidentally gotten dropped.
It happens.
It's not on my docket.
We can find it.
It's capital improvements. It was on 10/22. Email was 10/18. I just lost it. Hold on. Right here. The mayor recommends the following items listed below from the City of Attleboro Capital Improvements Program, blah, blah, blah. Request, your honorable body, $460,000, blah, blah, blah. 280 to fund 3429 Hyman Fine Hill Roberts Gym Floors, 180,000 to fund 3428 elementary school parking lots. So if that was 10/22. So if that was committee, so 10/29 would have been full full council.
I'll go back and see if there was a vote done that wasn't recorded, but it's 3 offices that didn't have it.
Well, I'm looking for, oh, no, trust me, I'm sure it happened here.
I promise you I'll get to the bottom of it tomorrow morning first thing.
Yeah, it just
Virginia.
was eating at me.
Virginia will get an email from me, she'll come in and she'll tackle it
Yeah.
straight away.
And if there's something that you need from my office, or if we missed it, we'll record the vote.
Yep.
Good evening.
Good
Hi.
evening. I've got to give you my standard speech. We're really, the committee is Vice Chair, Councilor Waterman, Member Chair, Member Councilor Dolan. We've asked Ms. Scholes to join us this year because she has a substantial contribution to the discussions. We started last Wednesday, and the first person we met with was the mayor, and the mayor informed us that the budget for capital improvements in fiscal year 21 was cut to 0. You're an enterprise account, so it's a different world for you. But his requests were $2.5 million over his levy amount, and so he was very concerned about what he was going to do in the budget. In your case, you and I in the past have talked about adding a cent or two to the sewer rate so that you could build up a capital improvement account on your own.
Yes.
And I'm now at the point where I am ready to present that to the council. So that's one of the things that I have on my agenda for the next 60 days. Is that while the budget process is going on and before we get to a vote on the water rate, is to get an agreement among the council on a level for a capital improvement project, just as we discussed last year in your little foyer there.
Yep.
For Courtney as well as yourself. So one for water, one for wastewater. And that hopefully will have better end results than all of the conversations I've had about a traffic control unit.
Well,
Yes.
Tom, did you put that in your budget? A line item, the capital?
No, there was gonna be discussion of a line item for the I&I plan that we plan on carrying out.
Was there a $250,000?
225, I believe.
200, there might be something in there. I
That was
think
for
Barry
the, that was
mentioned
for
to
the
me
sewer
last
rehabilitation
Friday
project, yeah.
when he was going through and hitting highlights of things that he's like, Deb, you need to know these things. I'm gonna double check for you, but that
That's
may
news to me.
actually have made, that might have made it for this department.
Yeah, last time I looked at Munis at this year's fiscal 21 budget, when I was checking it again, it hadn't shown up.
It hadn't?
I
Okay,
would have
I'm gonna go
noticed
look.
that much of a jump. I didn't notice a jump, so I don't believe it was in there. But that was right after the meeting we had with Barry.
He did ask me to create the line.
Good.
It has been added to the chart of accounts.
I'm happy.
So I don't know if it actually made it, sir, but I know the administration did ask for the line to be created. So,
Good. Wastewater, page 125. Why does it say water department?
116,
116.
yeah.
Thank you. So, your urgent items are so expensive, they typically get bonded.
Yep.
And that would be phase 2 of the sludge landfill capping.
That's actually, just a correction on this, that's actually, should have been in the status, it ended up in the wrong part of the CIP. That's part of the new sludge landfill, the garage, the ongoing project. So this was actually funded 2016, I believe.
Yep,
So the funds are actually in place for this.
good.
We're ready to start the capping phase of the phase 2 landfill, now that phase 3's been in operation since April. We're gonna be going out to bid hopefully this spring. That way there we can line up for the summertime construction, because we need dry weather to cap the landfill across the street.
Good.
So the money is in place for that right now.
I haven't made it up there, but someday I will. You're a little different than everybody else because you don't have any urgent projects.
I don't have anything urgent. I do have some projects that are basically we need to do this year. They're being mandated.
You want to take us through them?
Yeah, the first one is the baseline flow monitoring plan. I don't know if you remember a year or two ago, I had given you a copy of the SSES plan, the Sewer System Evaluation Survey that we were required to do for DEP. And in it, we had to outline what we were going to do to control the inflow and infiltration of stormwater and illegal storm drains into the sewer system, because they basically take up a capacity in the sewers and they're very expensive to treat. So our first step was we were going to do a large basin flow study and find out where most of the flow of I&I is coming from in the city. And that's what this phase 1 on page 116 is, baseline flow monitoring plan. We'll do a 10-week study. We're going to do 40 to 60,000 linear feet of sewer main. We will go in, we will do flow analysis and try to determine where the highest sources of infiltration is coming from. And from that, it goes on to 2 other phases that's in the CIP. The second phase of this is later on down the road. It's not this year, obviously.
Yes, Council Dolan.
Can you tell me what I&I is again, please?
Inflow and infiltration.
Is this when you have more water coming through, like people with sump pumps, blah, blah,
Some
blah?
pumps,
Where it's coming up, where it's...
ponding water on the road, seeking through manholes, very, very high groundwater, where I mean, the last 3 years now, at least 3 or 4 years, we've had a lot of rain. The groundwater is very high. The system in places is well over 100 years old, so we have a lot of pipes and joints where water's leaking into the system.
So you're trying to figure out where it is?
Yeah, we need to narrow down where it is, and then we'll go in phase 2 of the study, and we'll take the worst areas, and we'll go in and we'll do a little bit more boots on the ground. We'll find out exactly where it's coming from, and then that will be where we target in phase 3, which is actually we'll go into the construction phase, and that's where we're gonna go in and we're gonna rehab this section, and we're gonna stop the leaks. And then it starts all over again based on what we learned in phase 1. We go to the next worst phase, we narrow it down, we do the repairs, until eventually, over time, the whole city's been lined, and we've stopped most of the leaks. It's not a quick process. It's going to take a long time. It got a long time to get this way, so it's going to take a long time to fix it.
I got it.
I think that's what it was. I think we started out with.
It was going to be for this.
Right, it was gonna be 250 as a general line, and then given the timing of this, I think that's ultimately what the discussion ended at, that this would be funded in the 21 budget.
As a funding mechanism
Right,
for it.
and then once that line was in there, it would actually be, in the future, that would be basically 250. That would be part of the base budget for other capital stuff, but that would start to chip away at this. It's the I&I line that I think he ultimately put it in.
So that's done.
Well, it's going to be proposed, and hopefully it will be supported.
Right, and if it isn't, we can deal with it next year.
It would be in the 21 budget
Right.
proposal, so,
Right,
yeah.
I got it.
And we are on the hook with DEP also for doing this, because we told them in that report that we filed in 2017, we were going to do this, and I did receive a phone call a couple of months ago, and they just, when are you going to do that? And I said, don't worry, it's in the capital, it's gonna get done this year, we'll get it done, so.
Council Dolan.
So, does DEP require us to do this?
Yes, it's actually in our permit that we have to do I&I control as part of our permit. Every year I have to file an I&I report every April. And honestly, since the wet weather hit, every year it should be getting better. It's getting worse.
And, because when we don't target these areas and don't do anything about it, whatever the source is, we're losing money, because we're paying
We're not
for
only
that.
losing money, but it's a major cause of if you're gonna have a sewer backup, it could be a major cause of sewer backups into homes, onto streets.
Right.
And operationally, it's very expensive to pump water, especially when you're pumping clean water and I don't know exactly how much goes towards it, but I know that the more I we take out of the basin, out of the system, and we let go back into the ground naturally, that counts towards the watershed permit for how much water they can actually withdraw out of the watershed. So if we take more water out of the sewers that doesn't belong there, they get to take more water out of the reservoir, which means they don't have to worry about, meeting their upper limit on pumping water, so they can actually get a permit with more water, take more water out, pump more water if needed.
Because I actually remember talking about this when we went on our tour. Okay.
Okay, Tom, next.
The next one is probably the biggest one on here. It's the SCADA system.
952,000.
That's for the engineering, the general services, the resident engineering. That's not even construction. Construction is almost $2.5 million. Right now, our SCADA system is been in place since 2004 when we did the overhaul of the plant. All of the components that are in there were on the market probably 5 to 10 years prior to being installed, because they never put anything new in. They never put something that's proven. The programmable logic controllers, basically the computers that run all of our SCADA system, they're no longer available. We can't upgrade them. When they go down.
In 2004, were they put in an open system?
Yes, it's open architecture. It's Allen Bradley open architecture. They went with Allen Bradley because it's considered like some of the best components, but it is open architecture.
So in replacing those, you're going to find the components are actually much cheaper now than they were.
They should be, yeah. I mean, the technology has come a long way, and like with computers, everything's cheaper.
So the majority of this cost is really engineering.
It's going to be construction. It's going to be a lot of it's going to be in construction.
Because the new components don't fit into the old racks.
We're going to be able to keep the racks. They were well designed. A lot of the I/O cards, the cards for the input outputs, the signals, those can be retained. It's mostly the PLCs that'll need to be changed over. We have some issues with the fiber ring. We have some breaks in the fiber ring. So our whole facility has a fiber ring, and all the buildings, everything talks to each other through fiber optics. We have some breaks on the ground. We have an idea where they are. We're not fiber people. We don't pull fiber. We have a redundancy problem.
That's highly specialized work.
Yeah. Right now, the system is running on XP machines. The computers haven't. Yeah. We're at version, I believe, 6 of the software. They're somewhere up in the high teens right now in the version of the software. We can't even upgrade the system. Yep. So it's antiquated. It's old. And it's constantly going down on us all the time now. So
this plant has a expected life of how far?
Generally 20 years between each rebuild. Figure 20 years max. But these being computers and technology, they're less. Some things, just to give you an idea, I do have a breakdown of expected life from these. And not everything's the same. Depends on what it is. So the PLCs are a 12 to 15 year expected life. The SCADA servers, which are the main computers that serve all the SCADA to the PLCs, 8 to 10 years. Most of your network switches, the closed circuit television system, that's about 8 to 10 years. The remote terminal units, and basically we're going to go with a thin client. We're going to go with just terminals going to the servers, and we're going to cut down costs by not putting PCs at every workstation. We're going to go back to one central server. Those are 6 to 8 years, but when you have to change them, you're changing just that screen out. You're not changing the whole computer out. So we're going to go with more of a centralized system that's very modular, that can be hot swapped and kept running and whatnot. We're not going to go with PC based everywhere like it is now. And the workstations, we are going to have a couple of independent workstations for doing programming and things like that. 5 to 7 years. So it depends on what component you're looking at. You know, the life expectancy changes.
So in layman's terms, the issue is that the system that runs the plant has become antiquated.
It's antiquated. When we do have breakdowns, we cannot get the PLCs, and we have to basically do some emergency fixes to get us by. We've had the engineers come out. We've changed PLCs one at a time.
And in upgrading this system, this can all be done in 1 year?
Yeah. The wiring's all there, other than checking the fiber and finding the breaks and replacing fiber runs. All the field wiring's not going to change. All the I/O's not going to change. We are going to integrate a few pieces of equipment that we've added since the SCADA system was installed. That'll be additional. We did put some different pumps in. We've added some other equipment that's not tied into SCADA right now. That'll be integrated into it.
So I'm trying to keep this down to a layman's terms.
Yeah.
Phase 1 is the engineering for $952,000.
Correct.
Phase 2 is the implementation of all the material that's $2,471,000.
Correct.
And that is $3.5 million.
Yes.
So in the end, is the plant going to be any more efficient?
The efficiency, no. The ability to run the plant, yes. The safety for the plant, yes. Our ability to respond to problems is going to be much greater. Right now, when things go down and we can't respond to something, we have to basically send people out and run these things manually and have to station people all over the plant to run a piece of equipment. In an emergency situation, it's nice to have your SCADA working.
And is the new SCADA system going to put training demands on your staff?
We're going to keep the same basic layout. We're going to upgrade all the screens to the latest software so they'll have better graphics, but we're not changing the project itself other than we're porting it over to a higher graphic and graphics.
So again, in layman terms, everybody in your department knows how to run that plant now.
Yeah, so they'll be able to run it with the new system, correct?
Right. So
Yeah.
it's just, it's not too much different than what they do now.
No, it's not going to be a big hurdle.
Right.
It's going to be prettier, it's going to be nicer screens, easier to read. We're also going to take all the remote pumping stations. Right now, the remote pumping stations communicate via modem. The system we've had has been in place since the 90s. Yeah, it's dial-up. There's a few places in the city that we cannot get phone service to, so we do not have telemetry on them.
I'm not surprised to hear that.
We are going to put them all on Cell Link, and they are actually and they're in a standalone system. I actually have computers that run DOS, and every time one breaks, I have to ask Bill to find me a computer I can run DOS on to put the program on. So when part of this project is we're going to actually integrate all of my pump stations all over the city with the SCADA system, so everything will be in one package, and you won't be looking at a different system for the pump stations.
Council Dolan.
So, you said when this was done in 2004,
Yes.
didn't you say that it was already old?
Yeah, you don't know how old, but I mean, anywhere 5 to 10 years, at least 5 years. This stuff generally isn't new. It's industry stuff that's been around for a little while.
Will we do the same thing again?
What we're gonna get's not gonna, if we did this tomorrow, it wouldn't be stuff that was made today, no. It would be something that's been on the market, but things tend to change quicker nowadays anyways.
So what do we look, I know you broke down the life expectancy of
Yeah.
all the parts. What are we looking at as a whole? Because if this was done in 2004, so it's 15 years ago, are we looking besides?
You're looking 12 to 15 years on the PLC, and that's probably your biggest component, and that's the biggest problem right now is the logic controllers. Those are what are giving us problems. We can't update them anymore. We did try to update them, and we actually bricked one of them. It should have been upgradable, but because it was so old, we actually had to take our last PLC and put it in its place when this happened, our last spare. So 12 to 15 years is what CDM has given as an expected life of the PLCs. I don't think it's to upgrade the PLCs because we've fallen so far behind because nothing was really done since it was installed. Nothing was upgraded. We didn't go every year and do the software upgrade. It sat stagnant. And we had a problem. We dealt with the problem, but then nothing happened. I think going forward, if we keep up and upgrade the software every year like you should, and we keep up with it, we're not gonna have as much of a problem. We're basically taking something that should have been done every year, and we're all of a sudden, now
You're
we're
taking
playing
something
catch
that
up.
was, neglected for.
Yeah, we're playing catch up. It worked, and it was, it was one of those things, it works, don't worry about it, use it.
See, the whole water thing scares me,
That's a big
concerns
project.
me.
Yes, it's a very big
Big project, it's gonna take up a lot of your time.
yeah. No. Not as big as rebuilding the plant was, so.
You're basically rewiring a plant.
Well, not really. We're gonna use all the existing, we're not gonna
You said all
change,
the wiring's
we're
there.
not gonna change in the field wiring, really.
Right, but all that connectivity is gonna be so different than what you have.
He's good. I trust Tom.
Yeah, right, you game, you're up for it. What's the next one? Is it the capacity study?
Tom,
Counselor Gould has a
Oh,
question.
sorry.
What is
Program-
PLC?
Programmable logic controller, basically, it's
It's a counting
the
machine.
onboard computer, it's the computer that,
Okay, just for anybody that's listening.
Yeah.
It's an abacus.
And then.
Yes,
That's
it
a
is.
good
It's an
one.
abacus.
Yeah. It's true. The notes that I have from the meeting that included the city treasurer, the mayor, Tom, his assistant, and Barry when he was here, that this would be something likely to be coming in the fall of this year. So, just so that you are aware of that.
So this has its own budget.
Right, but you still need to consider when debt hits and when the P&I would hit and that kind of stuff. So based on the ability, unless the council and everybody wanted to raise the rate to cover things, and you know what I mean, so that's part of it. But even at that, if you did a loan authorization tomorrow, if it came down to the council tomorrow, and then with the public hearing and the other things, when the city treasurer can get to market. So my understanding from those notes, it was the fall of 20 is when it was discussed for the 2.4 piece to come down. I don't know when the other piece.
Can I ask a stupid question?
No such thing, sir.
I ask them on a regular basis. Can the sewer rate go up so that he can get $3 million and then go back down the following year?
Didn't we talk about this with water, too?
You theoretically could, but the amount that you'd have to increase it in 1 year
So like doubling it.
more than double. 1 cent a rate. Actually, I might even have that, because I have a
Yeah,
piece of
because I
paper.
feel like we
it
talked
was
about that
around
with water.
90
So,
something cents per million.
current residential rate, 1 cent a rate equals $7,990.
Yeah, forget
So
about
for
it.
1 cent a rate. But you're not gonna raise $3 million in 1 year.
1 cent was what, 7,000?
So in this old piece of paper that I have here, it was
7,000.
$7,990, so $8,000, round it up.
Let's move on.
Right. Don't even finish the sentence,
Okay.
really.
Capacity study is the next one?
All right, the capacity study is, that came out of a conversation with the mayor, myself, Catherine, and Jack Jacoby, about discussing that we should probably conduct a capacity study of the downtown this is the business district. I actually, if you want to see, I actually have the area that was presented to me for this. This is the area that we're speaking of. That's the business district. That, because of all the redevelopment downtown, we have a very aged sewer system. It's the oldest in the city, is downtown. We wanted to make sure there was sufficient capacity to handle going from nothing to all of these units and these apartments and everything going in, after decades of nothing downtown, really.
Yep.
So I suggested maybe we should do a study and look at capacity. Let's make sure that we have sufficient capacity before we end up overbuilding and find out that we're having issues.
It's a great idea.
So they said, find out how much it would cost to do a capacity study, and that's where this came from.
Council Dolan.
I know, I'm sorry. Do you remember when you found money with Derek? Does he have anything laying around?
Revolving.
So the enterprise funds are completely separate and self-sustaining.
They
so
don't
to
have
speak.
revolving accounts.
So they don't have any revolving funds. What you have is the rate. So If the administration and the council wanted to fund anything, in theory you could, it just costs money. And you'd raise
$8,000 a
the,
penny.
right, you'd raise the rate. Now, to that end, they have existing retained earnings that, I think there's some thoughtful proposals for some smaller things to be coming in and some things. So my notes, again, from, where this was gonna be retained earnings in the fall, according to the plan that the administration was looking at.
For this.
The $100,000.
Yes.
So, can I ask another question?
You have the floor.
Can I, just a quick, to go back to the SCADA?
SCADA, yeah.
SCADA? So do you like lose sleep at night over this?
No.
No, seriously, that's a serious
I
question.
would.
We designed the plant to be able to operate independent of SCADA. It's not a good way to run the plant. It takes a lot of personnel. Basically, you bring in a lot of people and you stand here and you do this. But we were designed from the beginning to run, thinking that SCADA went, something happened catastrophic, we lost everything. We need to keep running.
Okay.
So that redundancy.
That makes me feel a little
It was
better.
built in, but the redundancy is staff, where the redundancy.
But when it comes to like water and wastewater, I don't know, that weighs on me. It's big. It's a big
It's
deal.
huge.
It is.
It's huge.
It's a big deal. It really is.
It is. It's huge. And people don't typically think about it. It's like electricity. You never think about.
But when I'm not on the council, that's where I want to work.
Okay, you got it, Tom. Future employer.
I was
I have a
totally
simple
I went there, loved
Yes,
it.
go ahead, Councilor Ward.
Because I live off of Pleasant Street, I'm not hooked up. So I was wondering what, just roughly, what percentage of the city is hooked up?
Anywhere from about 66, 70%. 2/3, a little bit more than 2/3.
Okay. And those are the people who bear the brunt?
Yes.
Well, the whole city does when we pay for it, yeah. But I meant through the.
So, then we come to something
Through the rate.
small. You want a new lift for the repairing of the vehicle?
Yeah, I actually,
Is this a
Call them.
freestanding Eagle lift?
yeah, it is. It's the 10,000 pounds. It was put in place in the 90s, 99, I believe. We had it inspected by
Failed.
Hurricanes. Yeah, all the base plates, the mount plates, corrosion, real bad corrosion. So it's tagged out. So we got a price. That's a 10,000 pound. We got a price to do an 18,000. That one's not even big enough. Since we put that lift in, the city went to buying 450s and 550s. I mean, the most you can lift with that is a pickup truck. So we did get a price installed for a 18,000 pound lift.
Does the new installation take care of the reason why the current one corroded?
The current one corroded because just basically constantly getting wet, salt from vehicles in the garage. Basically years and years of just getting wet in that garage because all the equipment goes in there. Snow melts off of it and whatnot. It's always moisture in that garage. And it's just years. And when our trucks go in there and they're dripping, if they've been in the landfill, they've got ferric chloride and corrosive materials on them that actually will eat the metal out of everything.
Can the stanchions be mounted on pedestals to get them up off the floor?
We don't have the clearance overhead.
Oh, the overhead.
Yeah, we're very limited. We're lucky we got that, the lift we have in there right now because of the overhead. Mechanical equipment that's directly overhead of it.
This item is coming forward sooner rather than later. correct?
Yes, I spoke to you, yeah. Yeah, actually, and the price actually is better than originally thought. We shopped it last week, and we've saved almost $4,000 off the price I asked for.
So what's coming forward tomorrow? What's the price coming tomorrow?
13,145, and that includes a 15% contingency.
Oh, nice.
We're gonna do the electrical work on it to save money. The installation, the removal of the old lift, that'll all be done by the contractor, the setup. We will do all the disconnect and reconnect electrically. We try to do that if we can to save money since we have electricians on staff anyways.
So it could be as early as tomorrow coming downstairs, if not
Yeah, I was waiting for tonight, and, yeah, then I was gonna send it along tomorrow. I have it.
So you're approaching $4 million. You wanna keep going?
The last one, and this is one we talked about, this does need to be done. This was gonna come out, we talked about taking this out of retained this year. It's $75,000 contract to do a sludge landfill siting. We are required to site our landfills. And we're basically behind on this. We should have started this before Phase 3 landfill was built. We should have been citing Phase 4. We need to find an alternative place to deposit our residuals, and we're also going to look into alternative disposal methods. We're gonna look into digesting plants, things like that, where we will bring the sludge either as a liquid or as a solid, depending on how they want it. It provides feedstock to somebody that wants to cogenerate power or whatever with it. We'll take it somewhere else and we'll truck it off site, because we're running out of room down there. The biggest piece of room that we had is now the compost center. So we don't have a lot of free available land anymore. Anywhere else that's available right now is all part of the 50-year buildup of the plant, because when the new permit drops, we may end up having to put in more trains for denitrification. We don't know what's gonna happen yet. Nobody knows what's happening with the permits. They're not doing the small plants until they
But
do
it's
the big
only
ones.
logical that because we are who we are, I mean, a major city in southeastern Massachusetts, that we're gonna have to come up with an alternative plan than just piling it up.
Yeah, we can't keep putting it on site anymore. We need to find some place to take it. So we'd like to be a stakeholder and get it on the ground floor with someplace. There was some, I believe it was in New Bedford. There was talk about doing it about a year and a half ago, but it vaporized. It's no more. It's not gonna happen. We wanted to get into that back then. So,
Councilor Dolan.
So if we look for an alternative site, clearly we have to.
yes.
Will you simultaneously be looking for other options? like
Yeah,
we
you need
talked about?
redundancy. You just can't say we're going here with it, especially if you're taking it off-site. You need somewhere else to bring it. And even if we,
But if you talked about, like, if we found a site, or, we have to spend the money to look for a site, find a site, will you be still looking into
Yes.
the alternative methods
Yeah.
as far as the
yeah,
plants?
because if you get a site that's good for 7 years and you find another place to send half your solids, well, that 7-year site now becomes a 14-year site.
Right,
So if you can, send half here, process half here, you're gonna double the life of that site, so.
so you'll still be exploring the other options?
Yeah, we're gonna do both, yeah. It may be one or the other, but chances are it's gonna be both. We're gonna need more than one, especially if we go off-site. We can't count on going off-site, because
Right.
then we lose a lot of the control once it's off-site. So if something happens at this digester plant or something, all of a sudden they say, hey, we can't take solids anymore, something happened,
Right.
major plant malfunction, where do we go? We still need a place to bring the solids.
Gotcha.
Any other questions for Tom?
No,
Tom, any comments for us? Thank you for
Thank you.
attendance.
thank you very much.
I appreciate it. Any other thing you wish to discuss at our meeting?
Next Monday, we'll,
Yep,
Get together.
we're gonna meet, Monday
6.
at 6 o'clock. And, before that, on Friday at 1:30, I'm going to Studley.
Great.
And tomorrow night
Yeah,
at
we'll get
5:30, the
Studley.
school committee meeting will be broadcast on AACS, and they'll be discussing that train contract. So without any further ado, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
Thank you. I declare the capital improvements and city development meeting of January 29th and February 3rd to be adjourned at 9:04. All in favor, say
Aye.
aye. Thank you for your participation.
I'm fine with that now.